This episode of the Three Buddy Problem is brought to you by Material Security, the smarter way to protect Google Workspace. Your Gmail and Google Drive hold the keys to your company's data. Instead of juggling half-broken detections and manual triage, Material Security gives you one platform that automatically finds, investigates, and fixes account threats across email, files, and users. Material Security, protecting cloud and email assets from the inside out.
So why are people still putting MongoDB on the internet? That's the question.
What are they using it for?
Yeah, maybe they have to. Good morning, everyone. This is the Three Buddy Problem, episode 79 on January 2nd, 2026. Brand new year. Big changes happening in a lot of people's lives. My happy new year to everyone listening to the show. Our thanks to Material Security for sponsoring this episode and for sponsoring this podcast for the remainder of January. So shout out to those guys for supporting the show. It's been a slow news week, guys. I did the usual rounds that I usually do on Friday mornings, and the top news story everywhere is predictions for 2026. Everybody's making their own predictions. So I figure we'll start there, and I put you guys all on the spot and tell me what's your one useful, significant prediction for 2026 as it relates to cybersecurity, geopolitics, spyware, whatever it is. I'll start with you, Costin.
Unexpected.
Yeah, I gotta make up the news just like every other website is doing.
I know.
I was told this was a book club meeting. It's not even like, how are you doing? What's going on? How's Romania? Nothing, bro.
Fold it into your
vampires.
prediction.
Yeah.
I can make one prediction for sure, which is that people will continue to put AI where people don't need AI. So there'll be more of these co-pilot things, wash machines with AI, smart microwave ovens with AI, and things that have AI which actually don't need AI. I'm afraid that this will continue, unfortunately.
Yeah, and that's a prediction for 27 and 28 is that AI tech debt takes root and all this technical
I've been
debt.
thinking more and more about Dune, and in particular about this part of Dune, which is, as you probably know, in Dune they don't have AI. And the reason is that back like thousands of years before Dune, the AI went rogue and there was a jihad against AI, the Butlerian jihad led by Serena Butler. And since then, they don't have AI anymore. And I'm thinking, like, is this where we're going? Like the jihad against AI, is it coming? When? This year, next year, 2 years, 3 years?
Man,
I don't know what he's talking about.
It's just all it's all the ridiculousness of anthropomorphizing this shit. I think once we get all a little more sober about this, we're gonna just stop calling it AI the same way that we always have, right? What the parts that are actually useful and turn into like automation, they will seamlessly go into certain things, and we won't think of them as AI. And then it's just gonna be the science fiction enthusiasts who are gonna keep bitching about AGI and.
When do you think this is? This is a year away? 2, 3 years away?
I think it's entirely economically derived. So the real issue right now is that there is, as we've discussed many, many times. Sorry, there's some truck backing up outside. There's all of this kind of economic hype and things that are just very tied into AI for its funding and important sort of economic drivers, and that's keeping people from being able to look at this thing objectively and being able to just focus on what it is and what it does. I think that also means that the economic factors are going to determine how most people think about it, for better or worse. So, for example, if we have a giant economic crash, for whatever reason, whether it's because we're overinvesting into AI or because of the housing crisis or because of inflation or whatever, I think that too will sour people on the grand vision of AI, perhaps prematurely and unwisely. But I think we need to kind of disconnect sentiment about the technology, sentiment about the sector from the objective reality of what it is and what it can do. And most people won't be able to do that, but we as practitioners need to do that.
And we need to understand that we're in super early days. 3 years ago, ChatGPT as a public-facing UI didn't exist. I remember when it first came out, people were posting screenshots of hallucinations and dismissing it within the first week. Right? We're just 3 years in. This is not even a blip on the radar of things. What it looks like in a year, 2 years from now, it's going to be.
I think people still need to stop putting AI into everything.
I agree with you. You started the show.
Sorry,
What?
go ahead.
Okay, no. If you think we should put AI into everything, let's go.
Yes, let's go.
Let's go. I
It's inevitable, you think?
I think Sorry, were you asking Kosin?
No, you, Juanito. You think it's inevitable that it's a flavor of agentic something gets into everything, right?
It's not that it's inevitable, it's that it is partially desirable. I just think that if you had asked me for my prediction, and I was going to sort of riff off of Kosin in a way, but my prediction is that AI will break out of what is expected in a totally different way than what the science fiction authors and what the San Francisco people pretend to be worried about, which is, I think that AI right now is being shepherded by the same people who want to sell that shit. And of course, they continue to distort what that looks like. The breakout that
Is that the VC ecosystem?
No, it's the SF folks, the frontier labs, the people who are making it, or the people who are selling it, or the people who are hyping it, or the people who are presenting it. The breakout that I would like to see, ideally in 2026, but maybe it'll take a little more time, hopefully not, is one where the patients are running the asylum. Like, I'm kind of hoping that security people, medical people, physics students, math nerds, whomever, will arrest this technology away from the people that are currently hyping it up and take it in directions that are not what is intended by the creators, and sort of pipe it into everything in meaningful and useful ways, and not in the ways that, not chatbots. Of course, we're not excited about chatbots. Of course, we're not excited about, the Microsoft approach to AI, Copilot in everything. Here's a useless chatbot that's just tacked onto every product. Like, who gives a shit? Like, of course, we don't want that. Nobody's wanting a slow conversational interface for all of the things that they do. But that is looking at AI through a very narrow lens of a very specific application that is meant to make it very accessible to non-technical people. And I think the really exciting applications of AI, or whatever this new paradigm is of large language models, has more to do with what it enables for automation and for more complex technical processes. So, like, what I want to see is hackers
more AI and more.
I do want to see more AI, but what I want to see is it piped into how we design our systems. It piped into types of tooling that we did not think was economically feasible or possible or valuable before. And that we're not seeing yet, even though it's really right there, right? Like, every sample can now have like a Yara rule that's already 90% written and just needs to be edited and tested. We can have summaries of every report distilled down to attack paths and things that can be ingested into a system. There's a lot of, the way that I like to think of it, right, is before control flow, which was sort of the basis for our our ability to automate things in computation and make decisions in code. It started very simply, right? You had goto, right? Like, you had a jump statement of sorts. Then we started, then you had if statements, then you have if else and a cascade of stuff. You could have a which statement, whatever, switching between different cases. And then, eventually you get to what, like Bloom filters, and you're just trying to make decisions into what you can codify into code of saying, when you reach this situation based on these criteria, either take this path or that path or the other path. And that is all of decision making in computer science. And the limitation of control flow and redirection of how code sort of executed and what decisions were being made is precisely what determined where the human needed to be in the loop. And we have had to stay very close to the loop because these decision-making capabilities in code were so simplistic. And now that isn't necessarily the case anymore. Not for everything, but for for a certain amount of cases, that doesn't have to be how this works anymore. And my big thing is that I'd like to see us taking more advantage of that in the way that we design our systems, such that it's not that we're not in the loop, but I should come into the loop further out than some of these smaller, nitty-gritty tidbit decisions, and be able to come into it more as an orchestrator or a supervisor walking in and saying, okay, what work have all of you done? This looks good, that looks right, this needs to change, this part is not so good, try again, this, and then I walk back out. And it's about sort of orchestrating a whole lot of computation and resources in a way that was impossible 2 years ago, is still impractical today, but it isn't technologically, impossible. It's just not orchestrated that way just yet.
That's the inevitability. I think that's what everyone's building now. Costin, I feel like you're starting to feel like it's becoming invasive. Are you seeing something specifically where AI is being pushed where it doesn't belong, and you feel like there's a real risk here?
No. So I think it's also what Juan was saying, that the patients are running the asylum. And my problem, and the problem that I care about is the fact that people are putting dumb AI into everything when it's not needed. And
Give me an
the
example.
other dumb AI are like these super annoying things which start taking screenshots of your desktop so that you can remember when you were buying some kind of a bag 5 days ago, or like you were looking at some posh bag 5 years ago or whatever. You can search for it by, hey, which bag was I looking at like 5 days ago? And for that you need the full history of screenshots of your desktop, which is, in my opinion, the wrong way to do this thing. So that's what annoys me. And putting things that, like, I don't know, like voice control on the refrigerators. So like, hey, what is the temperature inside the refrigerator? The temperature inside the refrigerator is 4 degrees Celsius. Who cares? Like, you don't need that, basically. It's just useless shit. Or
aren't you tired of asking the air what the temperature of your refrigerator is and getting no answer?
This man puts his finger in the fridge and he just knows.
No, look, these are all, like you were saying, these are things that some people out there think that is what you need, and in reality you don't need that. And what worries me is that the people in charge, also notably politicians with very little understanding or knowledge about these AI things, they are making the decisions and they are running the show. And not just that, but again, people who think like, let's rewrite the source code of put your
Windows
favorite operating
Rust.
systems here, name here.
2030.
Let's rewrite it from C to Golang or JavaScript, because it's a
Rust,
smart
bro.
idea.
Come on.
I want to avoid Rust. I'll say JavaScript, because this way it will also run on the web inside Chrome, which Chrome can also run on your phone. So you'll have like a operating system running in Chrome on your phone or something.
What
like
a
that,
terrible
which, again,
idea.
Nobody needs.
What's that? Like making like assembly, like web assembly, like something that you could put in the browser? Come on.
Yeah, like instead of working on real problems and putting AI where it matters, which is to help you with practical things like taking care of your finances, I don't know, or taking care of security of all your devices at once, like a unified security view or management, or making cars better, but not in the way that you think or people think that cars should be better, which is like to say hello when you open the door. Oh, hello, Ryan, welcome to your car. No, this is not what we need. We don't need that kind of AI in everything. We just need the right kind of AI in the right places, which will make the life and your world a bit better. For real, not turn it into some kind of a surveillance nightmare.
And on the same tone of like who asked for this? It's like we also got to point to the frontier labs, like Sora. Who asked for that? Like to go make this. And then wait a second. I woke up this morning to Grok. Grok now taking instructions from folks to put bikinis on a random woman's photograph. Well, then let me ask you what that's all about, Costin, because you've been saying Grok is the only anti-woke one that gives me like an honest answer to things. Is this an honest? Like, who's asking for this? Who's asking for bikini? And
Perverts.
I see, right?
Yeah, I mean the problem is with the people asking for that, not with Grok. If you ask me, the problem is that the people have the liberty to abuse or to use these tools in like weird, like you said, perverted ways. And people blame the poor Grok, not the people who actually use it.
Mecha Hitler Grok. Like you're like, oh no.
No, in all seriousness,
look, a tool is a tool. Like it's a dump. It's a smart dump tool that will do what you ask of it. Instead of having a woke tool that will refuse to do whatever you ask of it, I prefer to have a useful tool that will do what I ask of it. And then,
even if it's being misused, even if it's being abused, you're willing to handle the trade-off of abuse, where potentially a 12-year-old kid gets put in a bikini for comfort of someone. I'm not bringing up the whole everything is pedophilia. I'm just
put, like, it's not like it gets put. It's more like some people consciously make the decision to create that image, and the problem is with those people, in my opinion. And those people should be prevented from using Grok or other tools. Or,
so you're not in favor of any sort of guardrails around those things.
I think in a free society, like if people want guardrails, sure, go with the guardrails. But at the same time, it is absolutely stupid, I think, to tie your hands or tie your feet so that you make sure you don't fall into a pothole or something. And I think it was a very interesting podcast with Andrew Bustamante where he was talking about information and information filtering in intelligence. And he was saying that if you work in intelligence, you want to have access to every possible angle. If you find yourself in some kind of a valley, then you need the vantage point from pretty much all over, like around it, like from all the peaks. And that includes maybe some vantage points that you will not like. But let's say people coming and forcing you not to look in some direction or censoring certain websites, like, no, you cannot access this website because it's not good for you. And like, just to give you an example, in Romania, there's a bunch of websites which are forbidden. The ISPs are actually mandated through law to block these websites. And in the past, they've done all sorts of stupid mistakes, like blocking Cloudflare or blocking Telegram IP addresses or all sorts of cloud providers, because they got these block lists of thousands or sometimes tens of thousands of IP addresses from organizations which are not specialized in IOCs. They don't know how to create reliable IOCs, how to test them. And this leads to problems. And if you ask me, I want access to all the websites. Yeah, me as a researcher, I need access to everything, which is why I use a Swiss VPN. I mean, who knows how long that will last.
Society needs rules and order, right?
We're overgeneralizing here, because we're overgeneralizing guardrails in a multimodal context, right? Like
narrow it down to the specific case, because that's the problem with some of these conversations, that we go off into the macro and we forget the micro of what we're actually dealing with.
I'll give you the real issue with what you're bringing up in particular, Ryan, is, I mean, image generation is very much the model producing like an output that did not exist before. And that is very different than whether we're being censored or directed away from something that already existed, right? Like, it's a very different conversation to have about, there's a website online and it has content that some people might think is dangerous or inappropriate, so I shouldn't let you see it. And I agree, as a researcher, there are valid reasons why you want to see shitty content, right? There's many of us who in our community who take on really awful work of exploring some of the deepest, darkest parts of the internet. And thanks to those folks is how we understand what's going on there. And I think making it harder for those people to access that stuff or for us to know the reality of what's there is not valid. But that's very different than talking about an image generation model that can be used to generate revenge porn or to denigrate, existing human beings and make them look like they're doing compromising things, or as in the case that you were describing, generating synthetic child sex abuse material. And that's where you get into some really, really touchy edge cases about like who is at fault, who is liable when, a user brings a prompt that is clearly meant to solicit something, undesirable, illegal, reprehensible from a tool, and the tool generating something, illegal, unreliable, reprehensible, etc. And who all is at fault there? And I think there's a very quick. We want to make that decision very quickly, and it usually falls along the lines of what our favorite part of this thing is, right? Like people who are against AI want to say that, of course, it's the AI, and they don't consider the part where, like, well, there is a human being at the end of this that's doing their best to try to get this thing to produce something. People who are really in favor of the AI will immediately jump to saying, oh, well, there's this person asking for this thing, the person's at fault. Sure, but if the product didn't exist, they would be having a much harder time
We've had
getting
this
this thing.
conversation in the guns don't kill people, people kill
Well,
people in
dude,
the gun debate here happening in the United States, right?
I'm gonna throw like the more awful and shitty part of this discussion into the ring. That I hate to even bring this up, but it is an important part of this debate, which is what should we think and feel about synthetically generated awful things, right? Like, the argument with child sex abuse material, CSAM, is, of course, that there's child exploitation that occurs in order to produce that content. In order to create these awful, awful things, you are abusing and damaging the lives of children. And of course, we're all against that. Now you have something that will synthetically produce that. And theoretically, that might mean synthetically produce it, depictions of children that don't exist. So in theory, no child is being immediately harmed in this. Obviously, you're feeding the proclivities of somebody who is, unwell and not necessarily going to do good things in society, and it's normalizing something that we don't want to normalize, and it's very likely going to incentivize bad behaviors that we don't want to see in the world. But as far as the discussion goes about the production of that synthetic material, I would urge you to sit with the discomfort of this for just a little longer before we make any decisions. Just sit with the discomfort of it and just consider, what would we do if it were artwork? What would we do if it's somebody drawing a picture of, a child in a compromising position? Like, there's a lot to be discussed as a society about like the actual ethical concerns and constraints, and the reasons that we are uncomfortable with these things. And I'm urging that part, not because I want us to become different in how we think about CSAM or whatever. It's not that I want us to be more inclusive of that. I'm just saying that the political answers or the quick, expedient shorthands that we came up with for those debates around television, around the early internet and whatever, they're getting outdated. And we're going to need to come up with some better answers as to why we don't want these reprehensible and awful things to be generated. And I suspect that our lawmakers and policy folks are not sitting on any new answers, and we're going to have to feed them to them. So for all the parents here and all the folks who have a general just moral fiber and would like to not see that be a factor in our lives, oh God, sorry, I would Jesus, everything's going off in my world right now. I'm sorry. Great. Ring cameras. Perfect. So I would like to urge all of you to maybe think about this a little bit and come up with some better answers as to what we expect from these things. And then we go back to the multimodal guardrails conversation and go, okay, So who's at fault when somebody gets an image generation model to generate something awful, right?
I might add that over the weekend, you could go to the Grok account on X, and there was a media tab there. You could click on media, you would see everything it had generated. Over the weekend, they removed the ability to see that. So you can't see what's being generated. It's still generating stuff, and I think it'll change eventually because people are using it for, like, they put Trump next to Netanyahu and says, hey, Grok, remove the war criminal. And Grok takes a stab at it, right? And it's like, it's just nonstop.
Whom did it remove, by the way?
Grok takes a stab at it, and it just like, it
That I
removes
didn't
one,
see.
right? It's just not. I think
I
once
saw
the
one with
politicians get lampooned enough, it'll probably change. What did you see?
Oh, I see the one with Bill Gates and Linus Torvalds, and someone asked to remove the worst programmer. Yeah, it removed Linus. So
I don't know. This feels like one of those society needs rules and guardrails, and we also need, things need to be free, and I don't know where the right balance
would it be
is.
different if it said image created with Grok by Ryan, by one?
Right. This would be a good
So then
kind of
everyone knows
it's
who
watermarked.
made that
it
shit.
becomes officially watermarked, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the other question. The other thing is that browsers and platforms need to start like flagging synthetic content and letting people know that this was AI generated. You shouldn't wait for Costin to spend 8 hours on X doing community notes to know that some of these things are AI generated. And they're getting so much better, and they're so contextually right that I don't know why the browsers haven't started doing that yet. I hit record just as Costin was grumbling about why people were putting MongoDB servers on the internet. Because I want to pivot to a story that broke after our last episode, which was MongoBleed is the name being attached to a newly discovered critical vulnerability in MongoDB server, CVE 2025-14847. Widely dubbed as MongoBleed, being exploited in the wild against exposed MongoDB instances. You started off by saying, Costin, why are people having this on the internet? Of course, there are reasons that some of these things have to be on the internet. What do we know about this?
No, I disagree with that. And it's actually not the first time, because we've seen a lot of issues in the past with MongoDB. Like back in the days, there were a lot of MongoDB related hacks, because MongoDB, unlike let's say MySQL, didn't have user authentication built in. So basically you just put a MongoDB server on the internet, and then anyone could just connect there and dump the entire database. And unfortunately we've seen some cases. I remember like back in the days, one of our good friends made a very nice project, put it on the internet. In about 5 days it was totally wiped, and it never came back. That was one of the stories or explanations. But I mean, I don't think there's any good reason to put a MongoDB server on the internet and expose it to the internet. If you have some kind of an application that uses that server, just connect to it locally. Like, don't bind the server onto the internet. I think that's a really, really poor decision. And as you can see, it comes back to haunt you. If you do this, it can't end good, in my opinion.
According to our friends at Censys, they have a platform for discovering these internet-connected devices. As of December 27, there were more than 87,000 potential vulnerable MongoDB instances exposed on the public internet. Almost 20,000 MongoDB servers are observed in the US, followed by China and Germany, blah, blah, blah. It's being exploited. Wiz is showing 42% of the visible systems have at least one instance of MongoDB vulnerable to this specific thing. So this must have been generating a bunch of stand-up calls among security incident response teams this week. Juanito, have you guys been following this at all?
I mean, tracking it to the extent that it needs to be responded to on our side, but like as Kostin was saying, I think this is a lot of this is largely sort of a thing being put in the wrong place or exposed in the wrong way. And this kind of thing is it's it's useful, but you aren't supposed to be putting it quite out there. So a lot of it is misconfiguration stuff. So it's not that we don't care. I think you're kind of looking to see at the impact and how some of it pulls. At the end of the day, you're just going to have to figure where this thing should have gone. Did it sort of get installed with like the usual being bound to 0.0.0.0 with no auth? How did that all need to get redefined? I don't know, man. It's like it feels it's every week, every month we've got some like horrendous internet-wide thingamabob, and
Like
it's
Reactor
not.
Shell is so old, right? It's like so
Yeah, it's
long
already we're
ago.
already past that one, right?
It's just nonstop, and I think that there's a lot of this stuff that goes on undiscovered as well. Like Reactor Shell, for instance, was privately discovered and reported, and we went into this fire drill. Like, how much of that stuff? How many of those Geotans are out there still, doing something nefarious quietly that we are never gonna know? Anything in the IOC side, in this MongoBleed thing, Costin, that you can mention?
There's no good IOCs. I mean, as far as I can see, everyone's publishing advisories, things. I've seen maybe some kind of detection rules, what to search for, but I haven't seen many IOCs yet.
And the EDR has a blind spot here because it's memory. It's a memory leak thing. So there's not much EDR antivirus visibility that you can get from this, right?
Yes, I mean, can make some kind of network signatures, but also spotting, I don't know, hundreds or thousands of connections to the MongoDB port 27017. Like over the course of a minute, I think that's super suspicious. So you can craft some kind of detection strategies for sure. And also people recommend to upgrade as soon as possible. If you can't upgrade, disable sleep or compression over the protocol, which is how the whole thing works and is being abused. So there are some mitigation strategies, but I still believe that the best thing is not to put MongoDB servers on the internet exposed. Put them behind a firewall, bind them only to local host, thing like that. I use MongoDB, especially they've gotten a lot better recently. MongoDB used to be quite okay back in the days, and other databases became a lot better, more performant. And I think that recently Mongo they implemented some new database format, which kind of again leveled the game, so it became good again. So I'm using Mongo. I'm using Mongo extensively in some of the projects that I have where relational databases are not suitable. But at the same time, I also hear a lot more people nowadays, they're using ClickHouse, which is this database system from Yandex. If you're okay with the idea of using this software, which is open source, by the way, from a Russian company. But in terms of performance, I hear that, that's mind-blowing. So I'm still yet to play with it, but I do use Mongo a lot, and it's not on the internet.
The other news story bubbling around is the European Space Agency confirming a breach against their external servers. Apparently, they were forced to fess up to this after some ransomware folks threatened to release the data. Whenever European Space Agency gets breached, it kind of ties into all the geopolitical things happening, war in Europe, Ukraine, Russia instances. I saw a bunch of stories around warships getting torpedoed, moving from Russia to North Korea and getting sunk. There's another story about the Finns hijacking a Russian ship that was dragging anchors and breaking fiber lines. Space Agency hack sends up the hackles on your end. Costin, what do you know? What do we know? Anything at all?
Well, we have a space agency. Like, this was the first thought. Like, wow, we have a space. No, I'm kidding. Of course, we have a space agency. I mean, maybe it's not that visible. I guess, to be honest, nowadays it's the private industry is a lot more visible. SpaceX, these kind of things are way more visible than NASA or the European Space Agency. So it remains to be seen how effective it is. But I've seen the news. There's users on a certain forum which is advertising the theft of about 200 gigabytes of data from the European Space Agency, such as source codes, configuration files, databases, SQL, internal docs, and so on. But so far they haven't, provided a large amount of data from the purported intrusion for anyone to analyze. So we have to see. It doesn't seem like a ransomware. It looks more like this kind of data traders or people who procure and resell data on forums rather than some kind of a ransomware attack.
APT possible?
I don't think it's APT now. I mean, let's think, like, why would an APT target the European Space Agency? Because I don't think they have a lot of interesting data. If it was an APT, then they probably try to stay there, like under the radar for years, and maybe induce some kind of sabotage of satellites. If you remember back in the days, Russia was actually through their rockets, they were putting a lot of satellites into orbit and sometimes even sending astronauts into orbit to the International Space Station from Kazakhstan or like one of the other spaceports they have. And I think the idea was that the Russian rockets were still cheaper and some people said even safer because of their technology, in particular these escape capsules, which saved the lives of astronauts. I think a couple of years ago, when the rocket it kind of entered some sorts of dangerous vibration stage, so it was about to explode. And this fail-safe mechanism from the 60s that the Soviets developed, I don't know if it uses transistors or like, is it silicon, is it germanium before silicon, or is it like what is how do you call the light bulbs, like the kinds that you see into high fidelity audio equipment? How do you call
filament?
them? Filament, but how do you call them?
What do you mean?
What's the name for those? Like, it's
Tubes?
Diodes, tubes.
Tubes.
Diodes, tubes. So is it diodes? I don't know, but it seems to work. It's from the 60s and people, they didn't die.
The Russian space program developed that by killing a whole lot of Russian astronauts before they could,
before they stopped dying, I guess.
Yeah.
Jesus. Wait a second. Costin dismisses this as kind of like, it can be APT because these people, it's like a space agency. There's nothing to steal there. That's crazy talk to me. The question I have is, when you guys write APT reports and you're talking about aerospace research sectors, are these the places you're talking about when you say aerospace? Are those different?
I mean, like aerospace includes maybe even things like missiles, missile systems which perform this kind of exo-atmospheric interception of, I don't know, Iranian missiles.
Does the space agency fit in there? No,
I don't think. No, maybe not.
There's reasons why you would want to be in a space agency for sure, and like we've seen, obviously, space agencies even for like places you never even think about, like Brazil, getting hit by like legitimate APTs, and you're like, well, why are you there, right? Like there's designs, there's a lot of like, there's tracking the development of certain countries, there is trying to figure out why you're going there and what you're going to do. There's also like, when it comes to satellites, your interests are going to be as diverse as the applications of what satellites are good for, right? Are you placing it somewhere specific to spy on a thing? Are you placing it somewhere specific to relay certain kinds of information? I'd be very curious about how much malware has gone into space, right? Like how much malware in space we've seen, and in particular with...
Didn't Kaspersky have a news campaign around discovering malware in space?
Did they ever detail the malware in space?
I don't remember.
No? But, it's not the first time malware will make it out there. And satellites are huge playground for espionage, right? Like it's like one of the bread and butter things of SIGINTers in their own way.
Hey man, SpaceX lives on the internet and it's space things. It's probably a constant target in the war. I mean, like there's many places why you would want to have APT living in space research centers.
Yeah.
The other thing is not
Yeah, but
necessarily
like-
to steal your data, but it's to steal data of people sharing stuff with you. You know, someone else might be sharing. Anyway. Another story I wanted to touch was the pleading guilty. You remember we discussed this? It's two security professionals that were working in ransomware response that were caught.
Three.
Three were charged in last October with conducting these ransomware attacks against U.S. companies. Two of them pleaded guilty and are facing 20 plus years in prison. And the U.S. Department of Justice just tied them to this black cat how do you say this? Alpha V ransomware groups. And any response to this totally due to these guys? And how much of this do you think is happening quietly without our knowledge? Because you have to assume it's so lucrative and so tempting for folks down in the trenches who have access to this thing. Do you think this is a significant discovery or a blip in the radar and what we really should be concerned about? Juanito, you go, Mr. USA.
I mean, I'm sure there's more of this than we know about, of course. It's like all things white collar crime. It's always like a perception of opportunity and impunity, right? Like if you have access to something and you think you're not going to get caught, like that seems to be the general recipe for white collar crime. And with these sorts of folks where you get this like insider threat effectively, you've got those elements there. So I'm sure they're not the first ones to do it. And we've heard rumblings of other people who, for example, we're trying to get intel on certain ransomware groups or other things. And you go, you're getting really good intel, but just what exactly are you doing to stay in with these groups, right? Like at what point has the line really blurred? This story, I think, got a lot of play in particular because of these guys being, previously incident responders. And I know folks who had worked with them in the past. But look, it comes down to realistically, a matter of trust. And this is a problem for all MSSPs, all MDR services, anything that's a managed service of some sort. You are, as a company, saying, we don't have the resources to do this job. It requires a certain level of specialization.
I'll outsource it to you, right?
I'm outsourcing it to you. I trust you to do X, Y, and Z. And to be honest, look, the people that I've met from different IR and MSSP practices, like they seem to take their shit very seriously. Like I actually really appreciate that about them because they tend to be a lot humbler than the threat researchers, right? Like we walk around like we fucking know everything, but it's also because we're not responsible for anything. So it's really easy to show.
The guys in the SOCs who are actually doing the actual
the guys in the
right?
SOCs, and like especially the guys in the SOCs, the guys and gals in the SOCs that are just managing that for a bunch of different enterprises, right? Like that's the fun part, right? Is you're not just doing it for one shop, you're doing it for 10, and you are very concerned about your SLAs and how you're responding. They tend to be very conscientious people, and they tend to be the kind of folks that are really tuned in, maybe too tuned in, right? At some point, being on call all the time for every fucking alert and everything is, it's a recipe for burnout. But they seemed a little shook, right? Like a little definitely uncomfortable with some of what you're seeing here. And it's mostly out of a sense of betrayal. Like you've betrayed the tribe, right? Like we're all working our asses off. We're all here to defend customers. It's not like we don't get paid well. I mean, I hope that all these folks are getting paid well in the industry, at least in the US. Well, maybe some of them are really not. I should probably amend that. But this definitely felt like kind of a kick in the gut. It's also why, as a responsible shop, if you are a responsible shop, that's why you have ACLs, you have access control limitations. You're trying to make sure that people have, that no one really holds all the keys to the kingdom. And even just from a security standpoint, right? Like we've seen APTs that like to pop MSSPs in particular, because then they can ride those accesses to the downstream customers. And we've seen a lot of those companies that, especially some of them in India and some other places, who could not care less. If they're popped, they're just going to keep going until somebody tells them to stop. So there's definitely lessons around the transitivity of trust here and how uncomfortable that all is, and everything that has to do with insider threats that we've ever discussed. Is this the biggest story or the biggest example of this? I don't know. I think there's a different angle to it where I have no commentary on these people getting charged. I'm not saying that they shouldn't have gotten charged, but it's also kind of hilarious and crazy that out of all the people in the ransomware ecosystem, the only ones that are getting charged are like 3 assholes nearby. And they are like a very meager part of this. You go, you idiots, man. Like, how could you fold yourselves into this?
According to the DOJ, the 3 men received a ransom of 1.2 million in Bitcoin from one victim. Like, that's the kind of payments that's happening in the background. And the question for you, Juan, here, just as an addendum, is there an issue here of revamping your ongoing vetting processes for employees as you move forward? Because you kind of you hire someone, they go through the perfunctory background check that HR does. You might do your own kind of background checks. Okay, we know this guy. And then it ends there. The guy's worked here for 3.5 years. There's $1 million ransoms in magic internet money floating around. Hey, the guy at the NSA with the fake Rolex watches, right? There's always a price for something here. If these guys are in that ecosystem, they're much more likely to be tempted and to be... what's the ongoing vetting story here?
I don't know that there is much of an ongoing... So first of all, let's divide all this up, right? It's very different to be in the IC and to be in the private sector for these things. And I say that particularly because employment law is only going to allow you to do so much in the West and in the US as far as like vetting the people that work for you. And there's do I think this is something that gets solved by background checks and stuff like that? No. Like, I'm sure that even if you had super dug into these dudes, I'm assuming you wouldn't have turned anything up short of, if you have a criminal record, then okay, but that just means you got caught before. In this case, I don't think that this has to... I've discussed the transitivity of trust in these ecosystems. That doesn't mean that trust is the only thing that should be at play here. By the time that somebody... Like, the way to deal with insider threats is not to have a culture of suspicion in your company and harass everybody, and then where the fuck did you get that? And like, how'd you get that fake Rolex, bro? Like, you better show up here in like Walmart, clothes, and like make sure you don't look very polished. No, what this becomes a question of how systems are enforcing least privilege access control, and how are things being logged, and why is so-and-so accessing this thing, and should this person have access to that, and for how long are we keeping the same credentials, and can this person access everything from wherever they are? And it becomes a matter of actual systemic enforcement and monitoring of the privilege that you have in being able to access certain things. And so it all always ends up coming back down to whatever fundamentals you have. It's just, it feels that much more precarious when you aren't a spoke in this wheel, but you're a hub, right? If you have access to a bunch of shit, then all the more reason why you need to be so much more careful, and not try to suss out the bad egg, but rather systemically enforce where that data and access goes.
According to the DOJ, 2 of the men were employed as ransomware negotiators at threat intelligence and incident response company called Digital Mint. Karsten, I'll throw a question to you. You've run a research team. You've managed a team. You're head of research at Digital Mint, and this pops up. Like, holy shit, I got 2 guys on my team doing this. Like, how do you respond to this? Like, what changes are you looking to implement? As the head of a team there, what is the guy at Digital Mint's top priorities should be?
Well, I think you need to start a bit earlier and understand why some people like this get employed. And the reality is that there is a huge talent shortage in our industry. And I've seen so many cases when good people, like really knowledgeable people, were applying for a job. And I personally had to reject some because I thought they were shady. They had some kind of a shady past, or sometimes people fall for simple questions. And you ask something like questions about your past, having written viruses in the past, having intentionally destroyed data, and some people are just honest and they say, "Yeah, I have written malware in the past. I have written destructive programs. I ran them on my mother's machine because I was upset with her. I was 15 and things like that." I think there's a different level of tolerance nowadays between people like myself from the older
Old
generation.
school
When
AV guys, yeah.
old school AV guys, for the old school AV guys like me, writing a virus was a terrible thing. So we would never hire someone who developed malware in the past. And maybe
That was
nowadays
a
it's crazy.
hard rule, right?
Maybe, yeah, I mean, but today that's crazy because I mean, all these companies doing pen testing, red teaming, you need people with experience, and those people with experience need to know how to develop viruses, and they need to know how to develop remote access trojans
Being
and
taught in
so on.
classes, right?
I had
Our
such
industry is
a
built
task
on
at
like,
university. Look, when I was in university at the computer science faculty in Bucharest, one of the labs was to develop a boot virus, self-replicating boot virus. And I refused to do that. I explained the reasons. I failed the class because the guy who was running the lab, he didn't understand the reason. He said like, but this is like just for academic purposes. We're not going to release it. I said, no, it's against my ethics. I don't want to do it. Give me a different task. He said, I'm not going to give you a different task. This is a task for everyone. I'm not going to make exceptions for you. And we agreed to disagree, and yeah, I failed that, and which is why I never finished university. Well, not
so you're
that,
saying go early in
something
the
else.
process and do a lot more
So
rigid
you
vetting
need
and kind of
to do a
stick
bit
hard.
more rigid vetting, and in particular, I think there's nothing wrong nowadays with people who develop malware in the past, but be careful like in what positions you put them. Do you put them in a position of defense or you put them in a position of offense? And I think that's like different skill sets that people need to have. So I would go like much earlier. If I discover a case like this, I would go back through all the people that we hired, let's say during the last 5 years or so, and see if there's any chances or signs that we have more like that on board. So we
You
need
have to audit
to
every
be careful.
case that these three guys worked on too, right? I mean, you have to
Yeah,
go back and audit all of them
'cause
to see if stuff was left behind. Like there might be
not
some cleanup still relevant.
sure, and you need to understand exactly what kind of advantage it gives you to have an insider like that into a company doing negotiations. So um, I think there's different levels of advantage. So one is that these people can intentionally sabotage the negotiations because they have the inside information, and they can say like, yeah, these guys are willing to pay that much but they hope for less. So be tough, be strong, and push as much as possible, and don't go below 60 million or something like that. So like on one hand, it can bring more money to the cyber criminals having this kind of insider information. Two, they can sabotage the forensics process. So they can sabotage some of the steps which lead to attribution, which they can cover the mistakes of the attackers. If they discover some mistakes, they can just delete those logs or pretend they haven't seen them. So they can do a lot of help to the cyber criminals, and I guess at some point they can even sell that, because I can't imagine that they were responding only to Black Cat ransomware cases. They must have responded to other cases. So then you can go back and say, we are selling our services on the inside to help other cyber criminal gangs, and you can sell those kind of things on certain forums. So unfortunately, it's like a very, very dark pit, and it's like a very, very bad thing when this happens. And the only consolation here is that it doesn't happen very often. You don't hear of such cases very often. Most of these gangs, they're Russian-speaking gangs from either Russia or the Eastern Europe, Moldavia, Ukraine, the Community of Independent States, CIS, because again, the rule remains, if you look at most of these ransomware operations and affiliates, they still have this no Russia and no CIS infection. So they would target mostly everyone except companies inside Russia or the former CIS countries. which is the norm nowadays. You don't get to see very often cases where Westerners are involved in ransomware operations. I mean, Scatter Spider is maybe an exception to that, but this is like kind of rare nowadays. And to have people inside security companies, notably those doing negotiations on ransomware, this is at least according to my knowledge, this is the first time that I hear something like this.
Oy. Juanito, there's a school of thought that this story and this case doesn't exist at all if companies don't pay the ransoms. The fact that companies are, a company has 1.2 million in Bitcoin hoarded and ready to pay a ransomware criminal. Where do you stand on that? I mean, paying the ransom in some cases it's a practical thing.
I don't know I've never understood that school of thought. The idea that you can just be like, just don't pay it. And you're like, well, okay.
Well, Cloudflare did, right?
So the real issue here is not what happens when you get hit with ransomware. By the time you got hit with ransomware,
it's too late, yeah.
Well, your option space is not determined during that moment. It's determined in what happened before that moment. So if you're a company that has everything backed up and you're ready, you've tested your backups, you know that you can get back online in a relatively like normal, manageable time. So that downtime is not the issue.
But the fact that people are paying these ransom means that no one is there. What you're talking about is you're talking about an ideal state that doesn't exist, bro.
Let me finish.
All right, go.
No, but the issue with these things is twofold, right? Like that's always been the double extortion problem. One of them is what's going on with downtime, right? Are you unable to continue business? The other issue is, well, what did they get? And what's the exposure on the basis of the data that's walked out? Are you going to have problems with customers? Are you going to have reputational issues? Do you have intellectual property issues? Are you going to lose your source code? Are you going to lose your list of whales? Are your clients going to be exposed to somebody else? Is your competition going to have access to strategic information that you have? And that's at the point at which I think I'm assuming most of the decisions when it comes to paying ransoms are entirely determined by that second pillar, which is how bad are we going to look? Are people not going to trust us anymore? Do we want our source code out there? Do we want like our clientele to be exposed? And the issue with that is there is not much you can do once the toothpaste is out of the tube on that one. And paying the ransom is still a pretty shitty thing, because what you're basically saying is maybe if we give these people what they want, they will choose to not make this worse for us. And it's like, how much can you trust these fucking people? Right? That was the whole point of Max Smeetz's trust paradox, right? Yeah. And why do we have the brands? Why are these people marketing themselves in consistent ways? It's like, well, so that you know that you can trust them. So if you give them 1.2 billion, or 1.2 million, you know that that they'll hopefully stand by what they said they would do. It's a shitty situation any way you look at it. And that's my discussion with folks when they say, well, why should we invest into security if you're not going to be able to tell us that we are going to be perfectly secure? It's like, well, perfect security is not the name of the game here. The name of the game is limiting what people get access to, limiting your downtime, limiting your exposure so that you can make more sound decisions along the lines of, yeah, they got this, but they didn't get that. How much, are we willing to stomach this thing, and how much do we want to support that ecosystem? That does not usually get covered by the people who say, just don't pay the ransoms. It's like, well, fuck you. What are we supposed to do as a company in that time, right? If you're in the first camp, the guys that you're not going to be able to get back online, it's not even a discussion, right? Like at that point, those people are fucked. So there's definitely like a have and have nots, and it has to do with how much did you eat your vegetables before this all went down.
Costin, your advice to people who ask whether they should hoard Bitcoin to pay a ransom is what?
I don't have an advice. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not a cryptocurrency investment advisor. I'm just a guy on the internet.
You're my cyber You're my cybersecurity advisor. I got a small company with, enough data that if it gets ransomed, it can be destructive. I don't have there's no way for anyone to have a perfect backup and recovery strategy and all of that for everything properly segmented. I think that's like an ideal state that doesn't really exist with just the complex state of our networks and the way data is stored.
I can tell you what I know from my discussions with one of my friends who was actually working in one of these companies paying ransoms and doing the negotiation. And he said the smartest decision we ever made in the history of our company was to buy like 10,000 Bitcoins when it was worth like, I don't know, something very small, like $200, $300, $400 for a Bitcoin. And then every time you had to pay the ransom, we would actually charge our customers at the price of Bitcoin, if there was a significant difference, and just use the old Bitcoins, right?
You make a profit.
We got rich. Yeah, they got rich out of this particular strategy.
I'm pretty sure about a year ago we said this on this podcast. We're like, guys, just buy a bunch of Bitcoin while it's down, hold on to it. That's what the CISOs are doing, right? Like you put that away for a rainy day. Yeah.
I mean, again, this is not me saying, this is what he was saying, and he was saying that this was the smartest decision. The smartest decision in the history of the company. I don't know if you should or should not. Of course, I think working with negotiators like these companies, it really helps in case you want to pay the ransom. Me personally, I'm not a big fan of paying the ransom. So if there's any way to avoid it, avoid. I've even seen cases, by the way, where people didn't pay ransom and nothing happened. In the sense that the ransomware operators, they never leaked that company's information for one reason or another. I don't know exactly why the data was not leaked. Maybe actually they didn't manage to steal that much, and a lot of people, they assume that a lot of information was stolen, while in some cases maybe very little information was stolen,
and they don't even have the ability to know, right?
Yeah, they don't have logs, and they don't know exactly what was stolen. So the ransomware operators can say, we have 16 terabytes of your backups, and they're like, haha, we have only 1 terabyte of backups. So it gotta be fake because we don't have that much. So yeah.
Or holy shit, where's the other 15?
Yeah, you're like,
yeah, can we get it back? Well, yeah. So I've seen cases and cases, and if you ask me, you should hold on to paying the ransom if that's feasible.
Yeah. This ransomware story isn't going away at all, though. I mean, it's like 3 years of having the same conversation. Should I pay the ransom? Should I not pay the ransom? How do we deal with negotiations? 3 years in, and we're still in the same exact place. Everyone is ransomed. An ecosystem is I don't know.
Tell you the most valuable thing that I have seen from my experience dealing with the ransomware was a lot of victims had backups, but very few actually had useful backups, in the sense there it's a big difference if it takes you 3 weeks to restore the backups or if it takes you 3 hours. Like those people with the 3 hours backups, they were online the next day. Like they just got rid of everything, reinstalled everything, patched the vulnerabilities, got rid of the 15 years old routers, and they were like back online the next day because they had the right
data
kind of backups.
Normal, man. Like you don't need to sit on all this data too.
Yeah, you need to test. You need to do like this disaster resilience testing, like every now and then, just see if the backups still work. Try to check their integrity. Are those network attached storages still operational? Would restoring the data actually cause the disk to crash? And I've seen this as well. Everything was fine until they started restoring the data, and the massive access to those hard drives, spinning hard drives, resulted in physical failure. So some of the drives just died. They were old, they were happy, like sitting idle, but under stress and heavy activity, they crashed.
All right, let's move on quick. You got something you wanted to say, Juan?
Well, all I was going to say is I'm really deeply disappointed by these people, because if you're going to run a ransomware op being in the US and so reachable, I am so disappointed that you would be hitting American companies. Like, the whole point of this shit should have been that you were hitting Chinese and Russian
We're
companies,
waiting for
and
it
we
to
could
be.
have
And
we
we're
could have
waiting
all
for the
come out to
government to-
defend you.
We're waiting for the government to privatize it, bro. We're waiting for government to put the guardrails and give us
Letters
the.
of
I'm just
marque.
I'm
saying-
waiting for letters of marque.
Fuck the letters of marque. These people were clearly willing to break the law. And I just would have loved for this conversation to be all of us defending these IR people, being like, no, they were fucking with the guys in Russia. Like, they're stealing money from Russian companies. That's what happens to us all day. Maybe they're not so bad, right? Like, obviously, it's still not an easy discussion to have, and the ethics of it remain, right? A shitty act. Stealing is stealing any way you look at it. But I would have liked for us to be able to have that conversation about, like, what is the morality of enforcing this Boy Scout double standard, where we can get pummeled all day long, and the minute somebody on our side punches back, then we come down on them. Obviously, that doesn't apply here because these idiots were just stealing money from the same fucking victims as everybody else. But I would have loved to see that, right? Like, I'd like to have that discussion.
Speaking of people who may not have been bad, we got news from the Treasury Department that the folks, a handful of folks behind Intellexa, the company, the holding company behind this predator spyware, had their sanctions removed. We had the story back in September about 3 folks, Merom Harpaz, Andrea Garbazzi, and someone called Sarah Hamu, were among people who were sanctioned due to links to this notorious spyware actor. This week, these 3 folks were removed from the list, and a U.S. official actually went on record with recorded Future News saying the delisting came in response to a petition request for reconsideration, and that each individual demonstrated measures to separate themselves from Intellexa, and it has been determined that the circumstances resulting in this sanction no longer apply. Big story or small story, Juanito? Big story in the context of, like, a lot of top-level lobbying happening around, like, removing things and normalizing this space, or small story where, hey, this is what the process is meant to be. Like, if we can force people to remove themselves and get, disassociate themselves from bad companies, we can remove them from the list. Small story or big story?
I can't tell. I honestly can't tell because I don't understand these folks' relationship with the organization. I don't understand what it means, how common it is for people who are named in sanctions as, like, officers of whatever to be delisted. I mean, you have to, if we get away from the particulars of this story, you have to assume that we're not condemning somebody for life as if they are, like, it's not like you're a war criminal in theory, right? Like, we're talking about you as an officer of company X being sanctioned, and I suppose if somebody comes out and says, hey, I am in no way connected with company X anymore, please, for the love of God, let me have a bank account, that that we would accommodate that. So there's that part of it where I'm just like, I just don't know how common this is. The other part of it that I think is, if we do bring back the question of this being related to Intellexa in particular and what this entails, I mean, it makes me curious, right? Like, is this the kind of thing that we're doing because we're trying to show that we have changed as a government, that we have changed our stance on these PSOAs?
Is this a policy signal?
Right. And I don't know. I mean, so far what we're seeing with this particular case doesn't seem to suggest that. And I'll remind that when NSO tried to lobby super fucking hard for themselves,
they got kicked out of the room.
They got told to fuck off. So
they didn't even get the meeting, right?
Yeah. So I'm not entirely certain. I think this is probably, like, thinking about this as individuals rather than Intellexa, the company, being, sort of welcome back in. I'm not ready to call it, right? I would just kind of leave it alone. If in a week what we hear is, hey, Intellexa is in a deal to be purchased by a defense contractor, blah, 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 then you're like, oh, okay, right? But we're not there yet.
Costin, what do you think happened here?
I was just thinking of a story a friend of mine told me. He said that once your name is on the list, it will never come off that list. So
we have a few
it's
friends
a bit
on that
surprising.
list, right?
No, it's a bit surprising. I don't think that the names, like these people's names, would come off that list simply because they are no longer associated with Intellexa. So what it says here is that each individual has demonstrated measures to separate themselves from Intellexa consortium. It has been determined that the circumstances resulting in the sanction no longer apply. This
I like the other
in my
line. Let me read the
experience-
other line quickly. The power of sanctions derive not only from the ability to designate individuals, but also from our willingness to remove sanctions consistent with the law. And that's what I think. Maybe it's the purpose of sanctions is to push people away from companies that we consider bad companies.
In principle, this is good, and I agree with you. But in my experience, this happens very rarely, and I can't remember any other case when people were desanctioned because they were no longer associated or linked with the initial case.
I'll give you a counter argument on that, which is I'm not sure that we want to make people irredeemable.
This is my point.
There's something to be like and it's it's the argument that people make about like cancel culture, right? Like, which is not what I'm trying to get into, but really, when you shun somebody, yeah, okay. Look, let's pretend that these are people who have done a wrong, and that there's no excuse. There's no exigent circumstances. There's nothing that they could say or do that makes this sound any better. They just made a mistake. They did something wrong. They knew it was wrong. They did it wrong, and we caught them, and they're wrong, and whatever. When you make people irredeemable, it basically tells them that the only life they have left is one outside of the law and outside of convention and outside of any pro-social system.
This is how criminals get hardened.
Exactly. And it's what happens with criminals, right? It's what, especially like with our particular approach towards law enforcement in the US, right? You go to jail for something relatively minor, you come out, you can never get another reputable job. Nobody wants to lend you a hand. You have a hard time renting a house. You can't, it's like you're basically forcing that person to reoffend because that's the only life they can live.
Or live on the edge, right? Live on the outskirts, right?
Yeah. And the same with these like, yes, this is much more white collar-ish, but do we really want these people to just be like, well, you're basically the same as like arms merchants. So why don't you go work now representing the North Koreans or trying to smuggle things for the Iranians, or, you know what I mean? Like you're basically stigmatizing these people for life. So I would hope that that's not the case. Obviously, that doesn't apply to everything, right? Like I think that's where we have to draw a difference between criminality, and certain kinds of acts, certain things where you say, hey, this person clearly has shown us that their moral fiber, their decision making is compromised in a way that I wouldn't want them to be an incident responder again. I wouldn't want them to be X, Y, and Z. Okay, valid. But I don't know that necessarily applies to, hey, you worked at a software company that creates software that does bad shit and people used it for bad things. You're not there, right? Like you're not holding the gun, right? There's still a bit of distance that you kind of need to account.
Interesting story. I don't know. I got a bunch of questions. It'll be too conspiracy theoristic, so I'll just like stay away from them. No.
Yeah, man.
Do you get a feel that this is an administration policy shift that is like slowly bubbling from the bottom around the way these companies are treated? Because the initial response to this story was that, oh my gosh, this is a stark change from the Biden administration to put Intellexa on the list. Last week, Intellexa was the top research we picked for, research into Intellexa was the top research we picked on this podcast because of exposing this web of things everywhere. Is there a feeling that the new administration here in the US is softening, normalizing a little bit of that space?
We're not, like, I go back to my previous answer, which is we're not ready to answer that. I obviously things are changing around how we are approaching these things. And I point you back to my thing about NSO, right? They couldn't get the meeting, but nobody blocked some random, Hollywood whatever from buying the company and sort of bringing it back into the fold somehow. And it makes you wonder even to what extent this is meant to basically say, no, you can't work in the US. You are a pariah unless you want to get in bed with a US company, right? Like you're almost incentivizing a different kind of redemption, which is to say, if you're just trying to make money as an outsider on the backs of whatever US economy or victims, then screw you. But if you decide you're going to play ball with some US associate, then yeah, you can be okay, right? Like, I'm not saying that that's what's going on, but at least that was the message with the NSO side of it. Let's not. I'm not ready to call it. We need more time and to see what the other shoe hasn't dropped on Intellexa for me to go ahead and say something.
Got it. Costin, you didn't go to 39C3 this year, right? Do you normally go to this conference?
No, I've never been there in my life.
I've never been myself, just because it's new. It's over New Year's and Christmas, and I'm not trading off my New Year's and Christmas to hang out with some Germans in a silo somewhere. But I bring it up. Juanito, have you ever been?
No, I actually I was just having this discussion earlier today where I'm like, I actually would kind of enjoy the idea of going to a conference instead of
Chaos
dealing with the
Communication
holidays.
Congress is what it's called, right?
Chaos
3Cs.
Computing Congress.
Is it computing or communication?
I thought it was
Communications.
Oh,
There you go. There you go.
never mind.
I brought it up because every year at this time, we always open the year with something big out of that conference. That's a lot of people hold really, really good, deep, hardcore technical research for release there. We got a really good triangulation talk from the last year. This year, the one that I saw making the rounds on social media, I haven't been following much, so I might be missing a bunch of them. But the one I put on the list here is disclosure of 3 critical vulnerabilities, CVE 2025-20700, 01, and 02, in Bluetooth audio chips made by a company called Ahora, a dominant supplier of these true wireless buds and headphones, the things that Juanito has in his ear right now. And these flaws affect widely used products from Sony, Marshall, Jabra, and they went through it. The presentation is available online, but they talked about exploitation of these vulnerabilities leading to full device compromise, jumping from Bluetooth headset to your mobile device, which is pretty fascinating. Did anyone of you get a chance to look at this at all? And like, what's the broader takeaway here for what this means?
Kostin, did you do it?
I did not. To be honest, not yet, because I've been in the Romanian mountains between Christmas and New Year's in the Dracula land, where we used to go every year, and it was quite snowing, beautiful, and I was like, well, for once, maybe just cut down on work a little bit and just enjoy the scenery, enjoy snow. We haven't seen like serious snow in many years actually in Bucharest. It's almost like disappearing completely. So I admit that I haven't looked, but
I'm fascinated by it because of the proximity attacks, things that we've been talking about on this show for a while. It's the ability to go after things outside the device and get compromised on the device itself.
Yeah, so I watched the first half of the talk. I haven't been able to finish the whole thing, right? And anything to do with, I think, proximity attacks for like Bluetooth and or Wi-Fi is quite fascinating. I think that's an area that is going underexplored, that more advanced attackers are definitely taking advantage of in ways that are going unnoticed. And you hear about this from more hardcore folks who are engaged in these things. The way I understand the talk, and like give me some leeway here, but there's this race protocol, and there's a problem with what it allows, in particular, in that you can essentially reflash firmware. You can read and write to flash and RAM for these devices. And once you have these devices, paired, it's possible to steal the Bluetooth link keys and can subsequently then impersonate that peripheral and get access to things for the other device, right? So like you might not think that your AirPods or whatever are an important thing to hack, but it is a device that is paired and trusted by your phone, and there's actually apparently way more information that becomes accessible to that trusted device than you might expect. So it's a non-inspectable thing that is trusted that is going to be leaking information in interesting ways. And the whole point is the big issue is just you happen to be in proximity to somebody who could affect these devices. So it is actually quite fascinating. It's actually very interesting. But I haven't watched the second half of the talk yet. So
another place they're shoving AI as well, shoving AI into these peripheral devices to like hear things. Like I can imagine, like this is another place where AI doesn't belong. Before we get Costin's take on this, but before I want to give these guys the credit, just want to name the guys. The guys who did the talk were Dennis Hines and Frieder Steinmetz. Hopefully I pronounced their names right. From T-Mobile and IoT Security at ERNW. I believe that's a German pen test shop, maybe a red teaming shop. I'm not so sure. Shout out to Dennis and Frieder for this. Now, Costin, go.
No, I said by all means, please put more AI into everything, like including where we don't need it, because then our jobs will be safe for decades to come.
Secured forever.
Please.
I know that they're putting more AI into like the listening device, because just let's be clear, right? Like how much can you process on a device this fucking big with this little power? I think that the gimmick is essentially, like with the AirPods, right? Like it does have some processing power, and it has microphones. It's listening to things. So something that I am excited for is this idea of having like automatic translation be a thing that AirPods do. I think that's a great use case. Do I think that the model is being loaded into the AirPods and the AirPods doing the processing? No fucking way, right? There's no way that's the way that thing is working. But come on, you're shoving the novelty of it all into. You're giving them too much credit, right? The thing isn't happening on the devices themselves. It's just a part of the gimmick now.
This is the kind of bug that Apple is paying big money for, Costin. Does this fall into that proximity bug? Like these kinds of things?
Any kind of proximity bug that gives you a remote code execution on that device, especially if that device is a smartphone or a laptop, I think it will be highly valuable, and it will fetch quite nice dollars on the black markets or through all these trading platforms. But I was just thinking, like, do we really need AI into AirPods? I think yes. I mean, yeah, we need absolutely 100%. We don't need the AI to capture our desktops and like that kind of useless things, but absolutely we do need AI into your AirPods to control the quality of the sound that you're hearing or do live translation. Absolutely, these are legitimate.
There's legitimate use cases, especially live translations. I think there's so much value to walking the streets of Bucharest and being able to carry on a conversation with someone. Should be amazing. That's the extent of the big news stories that we would normally cover. We're an hour and a half in, and we're out of stories to talk about. So I thought I would grab some reader questions for a little mailbag segment, if you guys don't mind. Over time, I get DMs, I get LinkedIn messages, I get emails from folks asking a variety of things. Hey, ask Juanito why he's going so soft on Israel. Hey, ask Costin this, ask Costin that, and I just never I pull them all together, not all together, but I pulled some reader mailbag questions, and I want to throw them out to you guys if you can fill a small segment on a mailbag. And this is for both of you, but it came in as a question regularly to Costin. Costin always says, IOX or GTFO, IOX or go away, IOX or your marketing. But for a lot of folks, they get a threat intel report on a Friday afternoon at 5 p.m. with no IOX, but there's still something to do. And the question to you, Costin, is what's your practical advice for a defender when a major vendor's dropped a critical blog post at 5 p.m. on a Friday? Let's say it's a Mandiant or a Google Cloud with zero indicators. What's the first step? Like, what are you doing? Juanito, same question for you. What are you doing when something like this pops up?
Well, first of all, thanks for the question. And I think it's quite legitimate and practical question. I enjoy especially practical questions because they give you some kind of chance to provide practical advice. And I say IOX or it didn't happen. That's what I say, not get the fuck out. So it's IOX or it didn't happen. But I'll tell you what I do. I don't know if it's the best thing, but if I see, and unfortunately, first of all, why would you drop that critical blog on a Friday at 5 p.m.? Like, why? Why in God's name? In like baby Jesus' name, why would you do that? Like, please don't do that. Drop it on a Monday, on a Tuesday, or ideally on a Wednesday.
If it doesn't have indicators, does it matter though? I think that's the source of the question is, do I even have anything I can do?
Yes. So I'll tell you what I do, and this is again my practical experience. So the first thing, I go to X or Twitter or how it's called, and I try to look for more information, because typically there will be other reliable people in there, be it people like Florian or Marcus from Article, for many of our friends who will provide perhaps a little bit more information about that. Or some people will say, oh yeah, here's some IOCs that we saw in our systems, and here's some hashes. And maybe, I don't know, perhaps the blog has some hashes, but nobody has the sample. So at least you can add them to monitoring, and other people will try to make Yara rules from screenshots. So what I do personally when this happens, I just go to X, which to me it remains the top source of threat intelligence.
You have a social network built there of folks that you're following,
people
actively,
that I follow.
right?
Correct, people that I follow, and people that ask things that would be interesting to me, although that is always polluted by some things that I don't really care about, such as US politics. But nevertheless, like, there's a lot of information that you can typically find about these blogs. Sometimes, by the way, sometimes there's nothing. And that is the reality. We need more people to push back and say IOX or it didn't happen. We need more journalists to say IOX or there's no story. Remember, we said there's journalists who just write a story about anything with no IOX. No, please don't do that. So more pushback, and check X. That's what I can recommend.
And you're also doing things that'll help people push the needle forward. Like, is this sample on VirusTotal? You have a Twitter account that, like an X account that tracks that stuff. Juanito, first step. Someone drops this big thing. I'm not as a threat intel practitioner, but as a defender. You're muted.
My bad. All right. So I think the process should always effectively be the same. And no shame, but I don't think that all of us or most of us are handling this the way that it should go, and it's the way that I learned watching Kosten do his thing when I first kind of was kicking off, which is any report that shows up, any report you read. It's not that you read it and you're done. You read it and you pull the samples and you put them in the system and you label them and you write a Yara rule and you put the Yara rule in the system and you go over the C2s and you tag them in the thing. And like it's essentially, it's a conversation. It's a dialogue that you need to have with this piece of input, because it's a very deficient and impractical and poor mechanism to drop reports, to drop stories. It's a non-machine readable approach. And more importantly, it's a non-specific or non-localized form of intelligence, right? I'm not, by definition, when I publish something publicly, I am not able to tell you your exposure. I don't know what your exposure is. I don't know who the reader is going to be. So there is, we should think of these reports as somebody extending a hand. You need to put your hand out as well to have a handshake and say, yes, I am exposed to this. No, I'm not exposed to this. I have more information, or I don't have more information, and so on. And I think folks make a pretty big mistake for whatever reasons, including not necessarily having the expertise or the time. But you make a mistake when you just read something and sort of try to think your way to understanding the exposure, or think your way through the narrative into determining whether this is something that matters to you. The truth is that you cannot, under most circumstances, you cannot make that distinction without inputting some things, searching some things, looking for some things. The easiest case may very well be, hey, MongoDB, and you go, I looked around, nobody here uses MongoDB. Goodbye. Right? Like that's the simplest scenario. But when you're talking about malware,
That's when you
you're
understand
talking
your
about,
stack, though, right?
Yeah.
In many cases, a lot
Yeah.
of folks don't.
yeah,
And
which is
no,
to
the
say,
point Costin was making from the MongoDB thing around, there may be no IOCs, there may be no indicators, but there are some fragments of things within the vulnerability report, the blog post, this, whatever it is, maybe a POC is out there that you can use as that first step to figuring out, am I even exposed? That should be where it starts.
I'll give you a different one, which is, you just said, right, you have to know you have to know your exposure, you have to know sort of your surface. I think that in scenarios like that, the more important, the more valuable thing is the muscle memory that comes from trying to answer the question. Because thankfully, if you're looking at something like MongoDB and the answer is nobody here uses MongoDB, then there's not a lot of pressure.
That assumes
right?
you know,
It's-
right, that there is no shadow
well,
IT.
but,
There is.
but that's my point, right? That in that scenario where there is no MongoDB to be found, there's not a lot of pressure. You're not feeling like the world is about to burn down around you, but there's something really telling about what happens when you ask the question and you go, well, we don't have an asset management way to figure that out. We don't have an inventory or a way to like check all of our services. We don't have a pre-populated table of how these things are exposed. We don't have any visibility into the open ports. You know, if somebody had put it up and it's exposed or not. We don't. You go, okay, great. This is not a scenario where you may need to lose your mind. But this is precisely when we should start to have the conversation about how do we start approximating a faster, easier answer. And I call this the inventory problem. To me, the fundamental failure of all security tooling is, up to this point, is essentially how quickly we jump past the inventory problem. The real problem of how we can leverage all threat intel, what answers we can provide for security, are a matter of, as an enterprise, as an individual, as an organization, as a network, whatever, how quickly and easily and thoroughly can I answer the question, what files have I ever seen? What assets do I have on my network? What is connected to what? What network, IPs, domains, artifacts have I ever touched? And the truth is that these are deceptively simple questions that almost nobody can answer. You can approximate an answer. You might be able to answer for a certain period of time. You can probably answer for only a certain limited number of assets. You can probably answer for a certain limited type of artifacts. But the ability to answer those inventory questions fundamentally underpins your ability to do any kind of security, your ability to ingest any kind of threat intelligence. So any effort, money spent or whatever, on being able to more readily answer those questions are the true investments into security posture, as far as I'm concerned.
So it's the same answer to the question, go back a little earlier. Instead of figuring out the first step after a report drops, you should go back a little earlier and understand your stack, at least at the very minimum.
Well, I think that's when you figure out where it's weak and where it's missing, right? If you do this as a purely intellectual exercise, it's very easy to like trick yourself into thinking that you're in a better position than you are. And that happens a lot with organizations, especially when you've got a division of labor between teams, right? Like, oh, we're the threat intel people, those are the IR people, and over there's the MDR people, and we can't answer this question, but surely the MDR people can answer it. They can't answer that question, but surely the IR people can answer it. And the truth is, no, it turns out nobody can fucking answer the questions. They all think the other person can answer it, and somebody's sitting there just hoping they don't get called on, like the nervous kid in class, just who knows that they didn't do the homework, and they just hope that nobody checks this time around. And I think that's why it's so valuable to have that conversation with the incoming reports and blogs and whatever, of saying, hey, fuck that. Even if this one doesn't matter, especially if this one doesn't matter, let's take the time to try to answer. Do I have any MongoDB? You go, well, we can't know that because we haven't done that. Okay, so let's go do that thing, because when the time comes where it's not MongoDB, but it's some other fucking backend, it's MySQL, whatever, which is the thing you use, you're going to have the same problem. But now you have pressure. Now you have exposure. Now you're trying to race the clock. And that's not when you're going to be able to solve any of this shit.
Right. If you follow Dino Daizovi and these guys on X, he talks a lot about going earlier and doing this segmentation and like almost DMZ zones for certain types of data. And like, I mean, there is a way to build this structurally from the ground up. I don't know how easy it is to backport a fix like this or a system like this to actually know where all data is and what affects what. But it's going to be the age-old question, right? Attack surface management is a big, giant industry of just telling people that they have XYZ sitting here. Second question, you often talk about Juanito, specific for you. Someone says, you often talk about systemic... oh, by the way, the people sending in these letters and say, don't use my name. Like, you guys are egging us on to do all these fucking rants and you can't use your name to even ask a question, so fuck that. The question is, you often talk about systemic failures and technical debt. Juanito, if you were given a magic wand to change one thing, I don't want a list, change one thing to actually fix this industry, what would it be? And they suggest somewhere, and this is probably, within your thinking over the last year, is it government regulation? Is it vendor liability, or is it something else entirely?
Oh, God. Just because you say one thing, right? And that's
they put it in all caps as well.
Yeah,
so I suppose they meant one thing.
I think I have to kind of split the baby in scope. If we're talking about
two things.
Yeah, I'm gonna do two things because you're not the boss of me, nameless person. Two things, right? If we're talking about the ecosystem as a whole, I think vendor liability is probably the most impactful thing we could create. And I would do that, to be realistic, I would try to approach that along the lines of what Dan Geer suggested in his 2015 Black Hat keynote, which was essentially, you turn vendor liability into two faces or two sides of the same coin with intellectual property protections. So you say, you are liable to the extent that you are the sole proprietor of or controller of the intellectual property that goes into maintaining this product. So you don't want to be liable? Okay, open source it, open the thing up, and let other people have control over the thing that they own and the thing that they manage. And you say, look, guys, we're not liable. We just put this thing out there and you have access to continuing to patch it. You can go avail yourself of the many services that would pop up to support these end-of-life things or open source things. And I think that's when you could actually create some semblance of like forced accountability or an acknowledgement of how little accountability there actually is by virtue of, showing who is legally indemnified and responsible for the things that happen downstream of security products and other products in general. I said I would sort of scope this sort of differently, and I'm cheating, but it's also an easy one. I think that's the ecosystem. When it comes to people and enterprises, I would just refer back to my previous answer about the inventory problem. I think we get way too caught up in the flashiness of security products and SaaS applications and software, blah, blah. And we delude ourselves away from really fundamental security practices. Not the usual advice, not that you need to follow sort of best practicey bullshit.
Yeah,
but
you sound like you're giving me a secure by design list, bro.
No. I'm saying that no, and can you do so, and you do so. And that is in a world where security practitioners for an organization just so happen to have free time, which I don't even know if that ever happens. If you asked me sort of like, what's the equivalent of like spending all your time sharpening your axe? That's the equivalent. Can you continue to push the boundary and the frontier of how well you can answer that question? How many, what network assets are you touching? What assets do you have? what files appear over time. And to the extent that you can answer with some certain levels of granularity, how much further can we push that along? And because that is your ability to fulfill the handshake when somebody shows up and says, hey, I know these things are bad. And you can say, well, hey, I know whether these things have ever been seen here. And that's what's always missing in being able to complete that handshake of actually supporting organizations in a security incident.
One thing you would fix is for me to go spend money on an attack surface management space to figure out what my problem is.
No, dude, because I don't know that there are any...
I give you a magic wand.
Ryan, I don't know that there are any readily available products to spend your money on.
No, I agree. I'm just emphasizing your point. That like your realistic advice to me is to go spend a lot of money on figuring out this attack surface management space.
It's not money.
It is going to cost me. It's a lot of money.
I wish it were money.
Don't dismiss it as not money. The reason we have haves and have-nots and a small business, medium-sized business ecosystem that are completely ransomed is partially money.
My man, I wish it were that. If it were money, then we would be having a different conversation, because that would mean that if I'm ready to spend the money, there is a solution ready for me to buy. And
you're saying that even that doesn't exist.
That does not exist.
So I'm going to take the wand away from this guy.
Right?
He is not very good at answering these questions. I'll take the magic wand away from him and give it to you.
Fuck you guys.
Costin, is there a thing? Is there a thing that can fix this industry? Is it more government regulation? Let's be more like Europe. Is it vendor liability? Is there a thing?
I mean, I guess it all breaks down to the fact that we run in a capitalist model. So that's a capitalist economy. So the only solution to that is that you reward successes and you punish failures. There's like, to the deepest philosophical truth, you need to reward successes. So whoever, let's say, didn't have 0 days, whoever didn't fall to any remote code execution bugs in the wild that were targeting either very select individuals or just everyone, you need to find a mechanism to reward them, either through, I don't know, some kind of badges or promotion programs or whatever, discounts like tax exemptions if you want. And the people who failed badly and they had 15 0 days in the wild, were exploited by APTs and cyber criminals alike, and then you have 4,000 companies which got ransomed. Those people will be, punished, fined very badly. So I think that's the only philosophical solution that works in a capitalist economy.
You're terrible because we spent a year on this podcast saying how can you jump from Ivanti to Fortinet? The alternative is
just use the alternative. Use something else. And
when there are that's my point. When there are no alternatives to move to, that is not an option.
There are a lot of alternatives. There are a lot of alternatives.
I don't know if there are alternatives.
That's what I'm saying. You and I have a more a pessimistic take on this one.
It's not so it's pessimistic from an organizational standpoint. Like if you ask me what the real okay, let me take that magic wand back. What I would love to see is I would love to have a commitment of, let's say, $500 million that we're pouring into a Bell Labs or an Institute for Advanced Studies. And what we're going to do is grab the brain trust of the security space in the US and say, you no longer have to worry about whether you're getting paid enough or you're going to have enough time or you're going to have the resources. You are allowed to come have a 3-year stint here and just work on solving whatever the fuck security problem it is that you want to solve without some piece of shit manager looking over you and figuring out if you're meeting your OKRs or if if what you're doing is considered to be valuable for the company or any of that crap.
A moonshot thing. AICC,
and that's a real moonshot.
AICC,
a real moonshot.
Yeah.
But which also means the freedom and trust of saying, hey, we've picked, nobody looked at Feynman and Einstein and von Neumann and these people and said, I don't know that you know what you should be working on. Like that's some fucking managerial school bullshit that we've come up with in the past 100 years. And we live to regret it. But that's where I think the true thing is. The brightest minds in our space are
Incentivize them and give
they're
them
all
as much.
wasting their time, misincentivized to do compliance bullshit. So that's where I want the magic wand to actually.
Thank you for using the wand. At least one of you did.
Then there's like another problem, I think, which plagues our industry, which exemplified through something which happened to us like last week. My wife, unfortunately, she burned herself. She burned like with some kind of tea. So we went to the hospital, and there, like to the burn people hospital, and the nurse took care of her. And the nurse, obviously, she asked like, "How did you get burned?" And my wife was like, "Well, I was trying to wash some clothes, and this was a Saturday, by the way." And the nurse,
washing clothes with a
You
cup of
see?
tea. You're doing laundry with a cup
You're
of tea.
forgetting the fact that you're not allowed to do laundry.
This is what the nurse said, like, you shouldn't wash clothes on a Saturday. I think that in our industry, we're washing too many clothes on Saturdays. That's a problem.
Great. I want to get a couple of these questions, maybe two more quick questions. Something that pops up a lot, I think you addressed it once, but someone asked again, what's the ballpark cost for a system like Costins? Like if I want to build a home brew, like this is how I got to do, this is the database I have to have, this is the server I need to have. Like what is the general ballpark cost for a system, a home system, a lab? And can you do a little bit of a breakdown if you don't mind?
Well,
cost breakdown.
So like a simple answer to this would be the cost will be your social life and some of your friends. That's one. But if you're asking for the dollars, right? I think that is more a question of dollars and
resources. Dollars and
Sure.
resources. Hours, maybe, yeah.
You can build like different levels of systems, and let's say the cheapest system you can build something with maybe a Raspberry Pi and a network tap. I think it will be maybe a few $100 to $300 if you want something quality products. It will be in the range of $200-$300. Then the question is, of course, is where do you stop? Because this, after a while, this becomes some kind of second job or obsession, or I don't know how you want to call it, but
project, right? Yeah.
Passion, home projects. So the next step would be you need to develop some kind of virtualization infrastructure. So you need to deploy maybe Proxmox. So for that, you need a small virtualization server with maybe 64, 96 gigs of RAM, maybe 128 if you can afford that. So that with some NVMe drive. So that will be more in maybe you're jumping to somewhere between $1,000 and $2,000 to deploy this small virtualization lab that you can later use for other projects as well. So you're jumping in there. And maybe the next level after that would be where you deploy a few of these servers. You build a cluster, like Proxmox cluster with redundancy. We have some kind of failover, and then you also deploy some kind of network attached storage for backup. There, I guess you jump into the range of maybe $5,000 to $10,000 to have everything deployed. I know people who spend the same amount of money on things like the Apple Visor, or how it's called. I never use it, so don't judge me. Don't judge me. So like I said, it depends where you start and where you stop. If you want something cheap, you can build something cheap, and then it will cost you your social life and some of your friends, or you can invest money into it and you'll have like a small autonomous home lab with virtualization and everything, and maybe you
wait
pay
a second,
between $1,000 and $5,000.
Right, that's the hunting for APTs on my home network, home monitoring type solution. I think the question was more along the lines of when they say your system is your threat hunting system, your database that you throw your YARA rules at, like that. If you want to build a homebrewed lab for threat hunting, or I'm starting a research team, I want to build a research team for a new company. Like what does that system look like and cost? Is there a ballpark number?
You start with the last system that I mentioned that has a kind of a virtualization cluster with redundancy and NAS for backup. I like to build everything on premise as opposed to using or leveraging cloud services, because then the cost can very easily get out of hand. I know a lot of people who
Fuck the cloud, bro.
fuck the cloud.
Yeah, but you're doing a
who
management of
build
it
everything
trade-off,
on
right?
cloud.
You're doing a trade-off of I'm going to spend these hours patching it, fixing it, maintaining
Absolutely.
it.
Yeah, absolutely. You trade off. That's what I said. It depends. Like you can trade your social life, some of your friends, or you can spend money. So it also
Friends
Gemini
are
do
overrated
it.
anyway.
depends.
Gemini 3 can fucking manage all that shit.
With the right money and the right cloud subscription and then enough dollars to spend on Hetzner or Amazon or the likes, I think it will work out. But again, if you want to build a company like a small threat intelligence startup, like I said, you need to start with the minimum that I mentioned before, which would be in the range of 10K, 20, maybe up to 50K initial investment into the infrastructure. And the infrastructure would be hardware and software, because you will need some kind of software as well, maybe for licenses like reverse engineering, automation, API keys, subscriptions, and the likes. And it matters a lot where you do it. If you do this in the States, you start at 1 million, right? If you do it in Romania, you start at 50K or 1,000. So it depends a lot where you do this kind of project.
Fair
So I think
enough.
it depends a lot. It depends, and also it depends how big do you want to go. Like, do you want like the big thingy or the good enough thing? So I don't know.
Oh, so there is like a haves and a have-nots here, right?
There's
Juanito,
always
you're
haves and
building.
have-nots, bro.
The most valuable thing, in my opinion, is time. Like, yeah, the most valuable thing is time. So the less time you spend or waste on maintaining these systems, the better. But of course, at some point, you may run out of resources, like in Monopoly, and you're out.
Gotcha.
So you need to
Juanito,
balance things.
You got a thought on a ballpark cost for a system? Are you building a system by any chance? And what do you expect to drop?
I feel like the scope of this has kind of like expanded to now talking about like what a research team and whatnot needs. So like that, it's kind of hard to do that. What I'll say is I think the cost of managing these things has dropped, even from a time perspective. Kosin is right. The most valuable thing is time. And the thing that you have the least of, but there is definitely a lot happening in this sort of like autonomous management space in an affordable capacity that I think makes a big difference. And I say that like I've been running this experiment of just having like Gemini CLI, particularly with Gemini 3 Pro, not with the old model, doing this like autonomous management of a Linux laptop, right? I don't give a shit if it deletes it. There's nothing special in it. But what I wanted to see is what it looks like to have a single interface where I go change the key map, fix the lighting, switch me to this Wi-Fi, whatever, and to what extent that system can actually do it. And we're getting there. And my big point is if you start accept that with the improvements that are coming for sure in that area, and then say, okay, if I didn't have time as the limiting factor, because I can somehow just instruct something that will hopefully follow my instructions within reasonable bounds, then we can start to talk about what it means to deploy something like what Kosin is talking about. And I don't think the costs are as low necessarily as Kosin is putting them out to be. I don't think they should be. Like, there is something really important to be said about investing in your tools. And I think folks get a little too bare bones sometimes. And I mean, I'm on the opposite side of the spectrum. I've been described as a maximalist. I tend to overspend.
What does the maximalism look like, though?
I think
Give me
maximalism
a window
is
into budget is not, well, budget is always an issue, but like
budget is always,
yeah.
But it depends on the scale. Are you asking me like what I do to like, how much I'm spending to build a personal system, or are you asking me how much I'm spending to build like a research team? Because I have got.
I think
both.
the listener is like halfway, somewhere in there, where I wanna get to Costin's level someday, where I have a system that I can go do my threat hunting, which is it's not a Kaspersky lab type scale.
Yeah.
but it's big enough where I can do my thing.
I think what you want is a Silas system, and Silas
What does that
is
look like?
Silas. I mean, I can't begin
No,
to imagine, but
cost-wise.
Silas is a beast for a variety of reasons, and we all have immense respect for him. But in part, it's because Silas is essentially like built a sort of home data center. He has the virtualization environment. He has, the thing where you can just deploy Docker and like pull this thing and have it already be set up and have longevity and have monitoring and have all that. But the truth, what he's showing is that if you tend to your garden, it does start to stack up. It is incremental. If you spend a little time going, okay, what is going to be the virtualization solution in my house? Yeah, that takes some time, but you don't have to keep addressing that problem. If you do it right, you now have a virtualization solution. Now I can count on that platform. Cool. What's the next thing? Well, what's the network monitoring going to look like? Okay, you spend some time and then you build it, you understand it, and now you have this thing that's storing network logs. You go, great. Then the next step, you go, okay, well, what am I doing with these logs? Okay, well, how do I parse the logs and what am I comparing them to? And I think that's where you get into some of the interesting scenario about how to do these things. I love how the conversation has unfolded in this episode because to be honest, I think that it is the same handshake that we were talking about, in that you have the part that you can answer about your house, and then you have the part where you need to compare it to a store of badness. And you have to be able to have both, right? Like if I sit here and I collect everything that's happening in my home environment, and I'm holding on to passive DNS. I'm holding on to whatever logs of what connects to what. I'm holding on to the files. I'm holding on to whatever. Great. I have answer. I am collecting an awareness of what my environment entails. Now, what do I compare it against? And I think that's where, like, I imagine that a lot of the discussions that people are trying to have, and a lot of the questions about your system, Kostin, that we keep hearing, are about the second half. Because the first half of it, I think we all, as practitioners, have some vague sense of what it would take to have passive DNS logs up from our home networks, and what it would take to store this, that, and the other, and to have a system. Like, those are answerable questions. Those are things that are on the internet, and it's more a matter of like time and investment. But the second question comes, okay, if I have this shit, what am I comparing it to? And that's something where I think you, Kostin, in particular, have created something that others find enviable, that others wish they had, that you do kind of need an answer for, right? Like, is there like a consumer grade TLP black system where they go, okay, if I pay you X, I can kind of compare my stuff? Or like, what do we do, right?
I mean, you can build a lot of things from scratch, and what you're talking about is establishing a baseline, which is very important. You need to have some kind of a baseline, especially if you do something like home lab and you collect telemetry of sorts, be it syslogs, passive DNS, NetFlow. You need some kind of baseline, and I think the best solution here is you just start collecting. So the moment you start collecting, this opens a number of possibilities. The first one is that you can build a baseline over time. You will be able to say if this is the first time that you have connected to this domain, or you have seen this host name in your telemetry. Or you say like, no, this is actually something old that we've been seeing erratically for quite a while. The other thing, which I think is really important, is to have some kind of a separation between devices and be able to say that this connection or this particular domain lookup came from my phone. It was not the smart TV. It was not my tablet. It was my phone specifically. So one of the things that I like to do a lot is to bind the IP addresses to Ethernet addresses in your DHCP server for your home. And this way, you later, know that your phone will always have the same IP address. And over time, if you collect the logs on the inside, not just the outside of your network, you'll be able to pinpoint whatever traffic you have found suspicious to a specific device. And that, I think that matters a lot. So establishing the baseline also matters a lot when you do it per device. You may have a kind of a baseline for your home, but that will be insufficient if you want to do some more advanced threat hunting or do machine learning or use AI or try to emulate some kind of hunting behavior. So for that, you will need logs. And in my experience, the best thing you can do nowadays and the best thing you can do today is start collecting those logs. The moment that you have logs, you can do baselines, you can do threat hunting, whatever. But the problem is that, most people find it difficult. They find it like extremely annoying to start collecting logs, buy the equipment, know how to operate the equipment, store the logs, also know what kind of logs to store, because I've seen people who just PCAP everything coming out of their homes, and to be honest, that's just overkill. Most of it will be Netflix traffic or Amazon Prime or whatever, and it will be encrypted, like SSL encrypted, and mostly useless for the purposes of threat hunting. So you need to know what to store. Selectors are very important. So you can, for instance, apply selectors to the traffic, and you can, let's say, store port 80 traffic or ICMP or maybe even UDP traffic, but not for a specific WireGuard ports, which again, it's encrypted and it's kind of useless. So you need to know exactly what to store and what kind of logs to have. So that kind of kickstarts your home threat hunting project.
And it's never too late to start, right?
I mean, no, absolutely. And again, if anyone needs advice on how to do this with no matter what budget, just hit me on X, like send me a DM. I'll be happy to help with some advice, depending on your budget, what kind of hardware you need for that, what kind of network tap. So nowadays, there are readily available network taps from several vendors. Some of them are, of course, more expensive, others are cheaper. So depending on your network configurations, if you want to do a bit of threat hunting, there's a lot of opportunities.
Fantastic. The last question is around book recommendations. Juanito, by the way, you're out here selling books, dude. There's so many, at least half a dozen people has reached out asking, hey, what was the name of that book about Apple and China that Juanito constantly talks about? I need to go read this book, this Apple and China book. Would obviously be the top of that list of the most recommended book on this podcast. But someone asked, what are your book recommendations? What have you read this year? And I asked you guys to each pick 3. I didn't go over the rules, but I'll go over the rules right now. You actually have to have a physical copy of the book with you.
Oh, fuck off. You didn't say that. I listen to everything on Audible.
Costin, you got it right? You got the rules, right?
What do you
guys
mean?
Suck. Where the fuck?
Everybody knew the rules. We knew the rules.
We knew the rules. So the rules were made up because Juanito is a big audiobook guy. And he doesn't read a physical book, which we'll get into because I want to get into a little bit. I want to get into a little bit of the retention. Who wants to go first? I mean, I can go quickly.
Go.
Should I go quickly?
Go, Ryan.
I don't have any fancy deep. I'll preface all of this by saying, when I do find reading time, I need it to be soft, quiet reading. I don't need anything too heavy, anything that's going to take me into a dark place. So I avoid all of that. I'll start off with a good business book. It's called The NVIDIA Way by Tae Kim. And I bring up this book, obviously, because of NVIDIA's place here. But it fits into what we talked about, long tail bets and companies that are disciplined enough to make the commitment to long tail betting. As I was reading this book, I remember General Magic, the documentary that talked about a company back in the early days that had the first prototype for the iPhones. There's a documentary called General Magic. I recommend you watch alongside this book that talks about companies that were early and sometimes too early and had invested heavily and had been very, very disciplined about making long bets and sticking with it. And companies that hit the timing perfectly, which is what is described here in this book, The NVIDIA Way by Tae Kim. Pretty light read. The guy is a former Bloomberg reporter. I have my misgivings about reporters writing books because we have our own issues in cybersecurity, reporters writing bad books.
Not
So
every reporter's written a bad book.
Or done a bad masterclass either, but who knows. Take him as a senior writer for Barron's and a former Bloomberg opinion columnist. Previously worked as an equity analyst. I'm going to kind of go along with his sourcing on the book. NVIDIA actually participated in some of the books, so which makes me question it a little bit. But it's a good read nevertheless. And for a lot of startups in the trenches, kind of grinding through, trying to figure out the bet they're going to place and so on, there's some pretty interesting lessons there. So I'll start with that. Who wants to go next?
I have 9 books, and none of them are physical. So
oh my God,
you tell me how you want to do this. It's okay. You told me it was a 4-hour episode.
I asked you to pick 3 books. You will show up with 9 books and none of them in hand. I can't even borrow one.
I read a lot of books, bro. I
Go,
listen
Juanito.
to a lot of books.
No, pick the top ones.
Okay, so the so hard to pick. So I think the top one.
What's the one you want? What you want the audience to read? Like the number one, the audience should just hop on and read because blah blah.
Absolutely, should read. It's not a new book. It's not, and it's not one I haven't necessarily mentioned. I talked about it in my LabsCon keynote this year. Is a book called Thinking in Systems: A Primer by Donella Meadows. It's essentially like a really manageable, easy introduction into systems thinking or cybernetics. And just so you understand it, essentially, it's getting people to think about how you manage systemic problems like the ones that we deal with in security, which are not about like fixing a single broken machine. It's not that, how do we fix this broken machine? No, we just turn it on harder, right? Like it doesn't work that way. There's a need to sort of like redesign the feedback loops, change the incentive structures, understand what it is that creates the condition that you find reprehensible or that you find undesirable, and change the incentives themselves, change the feedback mechanisms themselves such that you create and promote the condition that you want as an outcome. And not enough people are good about systems thinking. Not enough people are familiar enough with systems thinking, or a lot of us will do it intuitively, but we have never had somebody just sit us down and say, okay, this is how you should describe it as a matter of stocks and flows, as a matter of feedback loops, as a matter of system traps, and basically as a matter of promoting systemic outcomes as a matter of sort of probability and incentive, rather than just saying this thing is broken and it's because everybody's evil, or this thing is broken and it's because there's something wrong with human nature, or like those are pessimistic and cynical ways to just kind of throw your hands up and say there's no way to solve this, and you go, no, the problem is that it's a little more dynamic, and we need to address that dynamic nature. So great book to kind of start off.
Kostya, you're next.
You mentioned the book which was what, by Tae Kim? That's what you said? Like
Kim, Taekim.
I have also a Tae, but my Tae is Taekwondo. And I think Tae Kim, Tae means foot, right? In Korean, Kim, I guess it means gold. So your guy is the gold foot. Taekwondo is
a soccer player.
Way of the foot and the hand, right?
Uh-huh.
So like one book that I have here is called A Killing Art. I'm going to put it here for you guys to see. This is a book by a guy called Alex Gillis, and it's a kind of easy history of Taekwondo since the moment the General Choi, who is kind of a controversial guy, who has been credited as the founder of Taekwondo. He got into some kind of playing trouble. He owed people money, so he ran away to Japan. In Japan, he learned how to fight. So he learned karate, and then he came back to Korea and turned this into what is known today as Taekwondo. So obviously because of my interest and passion for Taekwondo, but also I think a lot of people, they have their kids in Taekwondo classes, or perhaps they practiced Taekwondo when they were younger. This is a nice book. Like you said, it's kind of the easy thing that you can read before bed, not necessarily to sharpen your skills, but more like to become more familiar with how people thought about martial arts around the Second World War, after the Second World War, and once Taekwondo became an international phenomenon, that all the masters left Korea and started traveling to the United States, to the Middle East, to Europe, teaching the way of the foot and the hand. So that would be my first recommendation.
Very good. I like it. My second book, which I have here as well, is Cult of the Dead Cow, the revised edition by our friend Joseph Menn, another reporter writing a book. Joseph Menn is an investigative reporter currently at the Washington Post. He is very well known for his reporting over the years at Reuters. He was a cybersecurity reporter.
It's a good
book. At Reuters for many, many years. Very, very good book. And for me, it's another light reading book. The book opens in my buddy Adam O'Donnell's living room when they were raising money for, what's his name? They were raising money for the Texas guy who was running for senator. Jeez, I should know this off the top of my head. Beto O'Rourke. Adam O'Donnell is now the deputy CISO at Stripe. He and I used to write a blog together at ZDNet. So that's why I talk about the book being light reading. A bunch of my friends are in here. It basically follows the story of the old hacking group Cult of the Dead Cow, and intertwined with the loft and of some of the old 1990s, early 2000 hacking scene here in the United States. The revised edition kind of goes on to talk about what Mudge ended up doing afterwards and so on. Very, very fun, fast paced read with a lot of names that you will all recognize. Highly recommend picking it up, especially this revised edition that kind of updates them where they're at now. It sounds like a book salesman. Shout out to Joe Menn. I've invited him to come on the Security Conversations podcast, so maybe we'll have a more in-depth words on his work and his reporting and book writing and so on. Juanito, go with your second book.
Okay. So this is an unusual one. Since I don't know how many you're going to let me do, I'm trying to pick like some of the highlights.
I leave you at the end. With the Oscar music playing.
You just walk away, and I'll keep talking about these books by myself. All right. So there's an amazing book, truly like stand out just from like. I don't know that there's anything like it. There's a book called The Denial of Death by Ernest Becker, who was a very interesting figure. He was like a psychoanalyst and a Buddhist and whatever, and he finds out that he's got a terminal cancer, and he writes this book about sort of how he's feeling and understands and approaches the fact that he knows he's going to die. And it's not a very scientific book. I wouldn't ask you to approach it that way, but rather sort of phenomenologically or experientially of like just thinking through what he describes as this terror. He basically says, humans are gods with these minds that can, soar and do anything and conceive of all these amazing things, and we're trapped in bodies that are rotting. We're gonna die, and we know we're gonna die. And his idea is that there's this baseline terror that everybody is finding some way to subsume. You're trying to manage that panic. It comes out in all kinds of ways: neuroses, specific fears, phobias, fixations, all sorts of problems that people have. And his broader argument is actually quite interesting: is the idea that all of civilization or culture are ways that we create these sort of hero systems, these things that we aggrandize as things that are larger than life. That expression being quite telling. Because we're looking for some kind of immortality project. We're looking for something that means that life wasn't pointless and something survives beyond us. And it's just a really fascinating way to kind of frame that problem. Well,
like, are you done listening? In your case, listening to it with this feeling of foreboding, or are you done listening to it with a feeling of enlightenment, a feeling of like some sort of positive energy?
I think it's actually quite a positive book, and it captures something that is very elusive to most of us, especially in the West. I think we have too much of a tendency to be to drown in toxic positivity. Everybody's telling you some nice shit. It's all warm and fuzzy hallmark. Oh, so nice, so whatever. Everyone smile, everything's great. And the truth is that life isn't always like that, nor should it be. We have this like kaleidoscope of emotions and different appreciations for what matters, and that's where beautiful things come from. That's where impact comes from. That's where legacy comes from. That's where you get to feel fulfillment. And if we don't note the escapism that we're constantly involved in by always wanting to be happy, always wanting to see things in some cheery light, we also miss out on the opportunity to make authentic decisions. Even Heidegger would point out, right, that like authenticity comes when we acknowledge our own mortality. And because if life is infinite, if we're going to be here forever, then you will always have time to make a different choice. You will come around to the same problem some other time. So who cares if you decided something authentically to yourself this time, or if you did something completely kind of base, and you betrayed yourself and your own principles. So mortality, the fact that we acknowledge that, look, you only have one life, you're only here for as long as you are, you don't know when it's coming, but you know that it's coming, and you've got to make some fucking choices, and they should be choices that you are proud of and happy with, and that you feel represent who you are. So I think it's actually quite a positive book. I think it can be very refreshing to a lot of people who have been taught that they shouldn't dwell on these sad or difficult things, and they often only do when something terrible happens in their lives, and you don't need to wait for them.
And I don't know, I try to avoid those dark books that have me putting it down with a feeling of like heaviness.
Nervous, neurotic motherfucker over here.
All right, I'll go with my third book quickly. There's a fourth book I have. I have 4 and 5 as well, but I'll go with my third book. It's a the text is very, very tiny, very thick book. But this is called From First World to Third World, from Third World to First World by Lee Kuan Yew, the founding father of Singapore, a place I've always been fascinated by, the ability of people to willingly give up control to a central authority in exchange for safety, comfort, order, good order in the streets and all of that stuff. So Singapore has always been a fascinating place to me. And this book I'm reading specifically around at a time when my homeland, Guyana, has found oil riches. Ooh. And has suddenly found itself a third world country for many, many years, one of the poorest countries in the Western Hemisphere, suddenly having millions and billions of barrels of oil at its disposal, and suddenly having to figure out this migration from third world to first world, hopefully, and finding itself right next to Venezuela in the middle of like war in the Caribbean Sea, something that's unimaginable to us. The way Lee Kuan Yew was able to straddle the fence of a commitment to China and the Chinese culture, and being westernized in many ways, having a financial services ecosystem in there, and to have him tell it in his own words, his own anti-corruption push and so on. Great book. Great man, great book. The juxtaposition between him being a dictator and someone you admire is all, plays in my head as I read this book. But I don't know if you get a chance to. I highly recommend it as another soft read.
It's not on Audible, bro. That's the problem.
Well, I'll make it on Audible for you.
If you record it, I will absolutely listen to it.
Kostya, you go ahead.
Okay, so you finished with your 3 books, right?
Yes.
And I still
all
have
physical
2.
copies.
What else? So another book which I find it very interesting, and some people say this is some kind of a critique of the Western intelligence systems. I don't see it as a critique. I see it more of a constructive criticism, if you want. It's a book by Ishmael Jones, which is a pen name, called The Human Factor. I have it here. This is pretty much a story of how he got recruited by the CIA, and then how he went through the training and the method, procedures. He mostly complains, I guess, about bureaucracy. And to me, this book is interesting because it applies not just to intelligence work. I think that every manager in every company out there should read this book, because it tells you so much about the dangers of bureaucracy and how you want to avoid that, how you want to listen to people, how important is what people actually say, and how you process the information that you receive out there from the field. The disconnect between the field and the theory, I think, is like one of these big issues that a lot of companies face. So again, it's not necessarily a book about Western intelligence and failures, but I see it more like some kind of a cookbook about how to fix your organizational problems. If bureaucracy is an issue in your company, then this is, I think, something that you want to look into. So
You
never
love these
mind the
spycraft
CIA.
books too,
Yeah,
right?
it's a spycraft book for sure, but I said it's maybe a bit more. And I know there's maybe a lot of haters out there because this book is not very supportive or positive about the CIA. But again, like I say, it's constructive criticism in my opinion, and it's definitely worth. And its scope is much bigger than just intelligence.
Fantastic.
The human
Fantastic.
factor. The human factor.
The Human Factor by Ishmael Jones, who is that's a synonym for somebody, right? That's a pseudonym,
Yeah,
not a
it's
synonym.
his
but
pseudonym.
Pseudonym.
What the fuck is wrong with me? Synonym.
And I have one more.
No,
and
you can't cheat. We all
I
have more
can't.
books.
No,
We're
no,
gonna- I have
no, no.
nine.
This
has
is
to give
my
his
third.
third.
Look,
I have
this
Juanito
is
has
nine.
my
to give
Keep
his
third.
going. Yeah.
This is my third book. You guys skipped me in one of the cycles, so you need to go
Oh,
back
wow.
to the recording and you skipped me.
Damn it, Ryan.
But like for sure, Ryan spoke
He's right,
ahead
he's
of his
right.
turn.
He's right. He's
But
right.
it's fine because I mean, both me and Ryan have this book on our radar. This is a book called "Infected" by our good friend from Virus Total, Bernardo Quintero. It tells a story of how Virus Total was started, the journey behind it, a lot of inner stories, inside stories, including some anecdotes. It's kind of the experience of a startup culture and all the way up to getting acquired by Google and kind of shaping the industry. So thanks to Bernardo for putting together such an interesting book. I admit that I haven't finished it yet, but nevertheless, I thought it was one of the most interesting books that I started reading this year.
And on that
There you
point,
go.
like more people should be writing books about their experiences.
Oh, yeah,
There
for
too
sure.
many of us do have done amazing, important things, building protocols, building the plumbing for this internet that we enjoy, building the infrastructure for all these authentication systems. And we don't get first-person accounts of their experiences. And shout out to Bernardo for writing a book about Virus Total, because what happens is that everyone else gets to talk about his story instead of him. And I hope we can start to see more of these things. I don't know how prohibitive it is to actually write a book, from a time going through the agency, getting the book sold, having to do all the bullshit publicity. I imagine it's a big, giant process. I don't want to wish it on anyone. But I know, I wish there are more Bernardos writing books about things they've built or about leaving stories behind for the rest of us. Shout out to Bernardo. I had your book on my list, and when I saw it on Costin's list, I took it off. So I just wanted to make sure I knew it was on my list first. Juanito, go ahead.
I'm having a hard time choosing. Am I going to get more than this, or is this?
Yeah. I'll give you a few more minutes. We're at
All
2
right.
hours and 22 minutes, so I'm watching
So we've
the
got an
clock.
hour and 40 minutes to go. Got it. Okay. So there, in that case, I'll give you kind of a softball. There's one AI Superpowers by Kai-Fu Lee. It's pretty interesting in the sense that it's the only account I have found so far that focuses on the AI space in China. And I think, a lot of the conversation we're having in the West is extremely Western centric and very dismissive of the Chinese. And in this case, that is not a minor oversight. It's almost like a ridiculous thing to do. We are not that, like the Frontier Labs and all the people that are investing money into AI and all that shit. We are not in competition with ourselves. There is a giant out there, which is China, which has woken up to the promise of what AI can be. It and in many ways is. In some ways is leading the charge. In some ways it's not. In some ways it's dwarfing our investments. In some ways it's not. But it also has a very different ecosystem for how it determines what companies matter and which ones are going to be successful. And I think we have been dismissive to our own detriment of what Chinese companies are doing, what they're accomplishing, what it means to be successful in China, which is a very different kind of economy, right? I think what we have gotten used to is saying, "Oh, the only thing the Chinese are doing is copying." So when a Chinese company comes around, you look at it and you go, "Oh, that's just the Google of China. That's just the Twitter of China. That's just the Uber of China," and that's meant to be dismissive in that we don't think that they have had original thinking. And whatever you might think about that, whether that's true or not, it doesn't really fucking matter. What they're showing is what it takes for a company to survive in this sort of coliseum. Kai-Fu Lee refers to it as a gladiator's coliseum of like competitors, because it's not like only one copycat appears in China. You should, like, Groupon pops up in the States and you get 5,000 copycat companies in China. And then it becomes this fucking battle to the death until you have a Chinese champion that is going to be their version of Groupon. And what it shows is a very different metal, a very different approach, a different philosophy as to the value of hyper-localization, which is something that American companies do not do at all. All we care about is general solutions for recurring revenue that apply to as many people as possible without needing to change anything. The Chinese are doing the exact opposite. And when you think about that from a company standpoint, I think it's valuable. When you think about it from the AI race standpoint, it says a lot also about what you can see when companies are acting to some degree in concert or with coordination with a government that is also trying to prepare for their future needs. So one of the biggest issues that we're facing in America and will continue to face is a lack of electricity production, energy production. So a lot of these big Silicon Valley dreams, at the end of the day, like, we're hoping against hope that there is an AI miracle that's coming down the pipe that is somehow going to just be life-changing by virtue of its own existence. Well, if that's true, and if it's coming, and if it's in some nth degree of scaling, then we are cutting ourselves at the knees because we don't have the electricity production in this country to run that. So there's, the Chinese are massively investing into solar energy, into, nuclear energy, into whatever it is they can do. There, there's some rumors about thorium reactors and all that kind of shit. And there's a big question here as to the material conditions of our success. And they are beyond just the intellectual. There is a physical and logistical component, and you can't magic it out of thin air. You need to prepare ahead of time. It takes 5, 10, 20 years to bring a power generation mechanism into existence. So there's some scary and important shit to think about that isn't just about language models.
Who is Kai-Fu Lee, and why should we listen to him?
Kai-Fu Lee it's a fairly interesting person in these sorts of circles. If I remember correctly, he ran, I want to say, Google China or Microsoft's AI lab. Like, he's just somebody who's he was very accomplished in American companies and decided to run some ventures for American companies in China, and then stayed in China to actually work in that ecosystem and do his thing. And look, let's address sort of the elephant in the room. I'm sure that there is some element of falling in line with the messaging that the CCP is comfortable with. And surely some of these things may be exaggerated. Sure, okay, but that does not mean that we shouldn't even try to understand what's happening over there. This dude is not writing a book where he's looking to get thrown into a political prison. It is not the spiciest takes out of China. But it is a report of at least how they view their space, their innovation, and their commitment to this AI stuff. And it is different enough from us and important enough that we should listen to.
Good stuff. I mean, there's a ton of AI strategy books out now where you go and look there. Like, I just went to look at this one, and the recommendation list was a bunch of stuff. That's why I'm constantly questioning who wrote this book, especially because like if I read a cybersecurity book, I'm going to be so critical. So I'm trying to look at it with a
Yeah.
critical eye of those folks. Costin, you
No,
got
there's a lot of garbage. There's a lot of garbage for
yeah,
sure.
there is. Do you have runners up? You have an addendum to your list?
Maybe just one final addition from my side. By the way, I used to have a page that was before Medium where I would review books, but I think it kind of it fell out of fashion. It's no longer very fashionable. But
Is it
on
up
the
on the
other
Internet
hand,
Archive? Can we go find it?
probably, yeah. But I was just thinking that if one would just take the full list of 500 books that he has for today and maybe put it on Medium or something like that on LinkedIn, I think a lot of people would enjoy it.
This was a big question on our list from the audience is for book recommendations.
Yeah,
what are you reading? People want to know what you're reading. Yeah,
absolutely. And like just one last recommendation from my side, which is a very, very funny book that I've been reading. Also, one of the books that I didn't finish. It's called "Thou Shalt Prosper." This is a book written by a rabbi, by the Rabbi Daniel Lapin, which is maybe obvious, maybe not obvious from the title. It's a book about finances and becoming rich, the rabbi way. Which I personally found it
Thou
extremely
shalt prosper, 10 commandments for making money?
Correct.
Oh, wow.
It's a very funny book. I think everyone would benefit from reading this book. And I think that it's a mandatory reading in some companies. Like in some companies, actually, the CEOs force all the directors to read this book. And like I said, it's very, very enjoyable and funny book that you can read before bed.
Juanito,
that's
you
the last
noticing?
Recommendation.
Juanito, are you noticing? My man launched TLP Black the company, and suddenly he's reading about organizational dysfunction and how to get rich.
Bureaucracy.
He's serious. He's
like,
serious.
what are you doing?
Art.
What are you doing? You're like a businessman. These business books now. Juanito, go again. Give me your last one.
Go.
Last one? No, I don't want to give you. I have like 5 more, man. What are you talking about?
500.
Yeah, I have so many
we
recommendations.
leave them for the next halfway. We got a lot of episodes to come. This is episode 1 of 2026. Give me your last one.
We're gonna do this.
I'm already like live going through Juan's list here in the GDoc and buying all of them on Audible. Like I already bought AI Superpowers by Kai Fu Lee. And I would just let Juan tell you the others.
Okay.
Juanito, the last one, because I want to have a conversation around audiobooks versus physical books and reading and retention and so on, because my experience is completely different from yours. But give me your last one.
All right, fine. But I'm not happy about this, okay?
We'll publish your full list, I promise.
Okay. So I have books that are complementary to each other. I tried to kind of put that together and so as a bit of a preview, right? For the denial of death, there's another book called The Drama of the Gifted Child that you guys should listen to, but I won't explain why because we don't have time. But instead, given the discussion we just had about AI superpowers and me kind of fixating on the energy production, there's an author that I find fascinating, even though his style of thinking is so different and hard for me to adopt. I'd love to, but I don't quite understand it just yet. And his name is Vaclav Smil. I don't remember where he's from, somewhere in Eastern Europe. And he has many books. Yeah, it's Vaclav, and his last name is Smil, Smil. The book, he's got all of his books are fascinating. They're all worth looking at. But this one is called Energy and Civilization, a History. And essentially, his argument in this book is that politics, culture, any civilizational development, like those things, none of those things really matter. That the history of human development is actually a matter of how efficiently we can extract energy from our environment. That all of human history can be looked at in that lens in a very telling way. And I don't want to reduce Vaclav Smil to just that, because this is what he does with his books. He'll pick one concept, like civilizational transitions or like whatever, and he'll just go through like 500 fucking pages of like how you should view civilization in terms of that. But in the case of this one about like sort of energy, the idea is essentially that human civilization is primarily determined by an energy ceiling. And it's basically like at what multiplier factor can we generate energy? Because if you spend all day as a farmer and your human labor is a 1-to-1 as to how much caloric density you can produce for your family, then every day of work is required in order to have the necessary basis conditions for you to survive. And that's very different if you can then sort of change that factor to a 1.2x or a 1.5x or whatever, where we can now produce a greater efficiency in caloric density and how we use the things we ingest and the energy we consume to basically have a multiplier effect into what human civilization can be. And it's just a fascinating way of looking at something that we have thought about and heard about a million times, but have it be pinned to something that we take completely for granted, which is the means and mechanisms by which we can have multiplicative impacts in the world on the basis of, energy and caloric density.
Amazing. Thank you for your recommendations. I have a question for you. Have you listened to all these books as audiobooks?
Yeah, some of them.
That's a preference for you these days?
Well, it's a preference of necessity. So I was never a big audio. I never listened to audiobooks until the pandemic came around. And shout out to Apple. A big factor in this are the AirPods Pro. I don't know what it is about my hearing, but sound isolation is a must for me to be able to ingest these things. So once the AirPods Pro came out and you had some form of noise cancellation, it meant that I could actually process what the voices are telling me essentially in my ears, right?
And do you find retention? You find, I don't know, what's your experience around like how much you're retaining? Because you're a physical book. You're a voracious reader like me, with like always with a bunch of physical books we used to travel with together. Do you feel like you're losing anything in retention having listened to it, or is this the same experience in your mind?
So let me tell you kind of my complex answer with this, which is it's not that I'm thrilled that I am an audiobook listener, but it has become the right tool for the right period in my life. At some point during the pandemic, I started to feel like my eyesight was kind of going, and I've gotten my glasses kind of fixed and whatever, but there's still there's something about my ability to focus on text that's not quite right, and that fuzziness became an aversion to reading. And it meant that I was relying a lot on text to speech, which is a horrendously underdeveloped. Like, I feel so bad for people who are actually blind. I do not know how they're exploring the universe, especially in technology. It's fucking terrible. But in any case, I was using a lot of text to speech, and it meant that I was having a really bad experience. So, but it also, it made me curious about Audible. And I got on Audible, and what I realized is that it essentially solved a different problem for me, which is this ADHD, constant interruption, and having your attention be split between 400 different things.
All amazing things.
All 400 everything's fucking amazing. Everything's fascinating. Everything's
that
awesome.
Dopamine hit everywhere, yeah.
It's impossible to choose, but it also meant that the idea of being engrossed in a book is a disproportionate time commitment to what it could possibly do for me intellectually. It may be amazing, it may not be, but the idea that I'm going to stop everything and for 6 hours at in any given week, I'm going to sit there with a book and do nothing else but read that, it just was unrealistic. So what Audible allowed me to do is if I tune the speed up to my internal monologue, which is why I listen to books in about like 3x or 3.2x. I can go through a book while I'm doing like errands or when I'm like
How are
walking
you
around
hearing
the
at
airport.
3x? It sounds like the fine print in an audio advertising.
You just go gradually, man. You start at 2.5 or 2.2 or whatever, and as you get comfortable with, because a lot of it is like the accent and the intonation and the way that the person speaks. So it always takes like the first few 10, 30 minutes, whatever, you're gonna need to adapt. So I'll go back down to 2.5 whenever I start a book, and then I'll gradually come back up. But once you get used to that, you can just tune it.
It's like boiling the frog.
Yeah, just 2 more, 0.2 more, 0.3 more, and next thing you're like 3.2. And what's great is it means if it's on Audible, I can go through a book in like 2 days, 3 days while I'm playing video games, while I'm doing chores, while I'm cleaning up around the house. Like I'm reclaiming time that is not very intellectually rewarding. And I'm not saying that that's the healthiest thing across the board. There is value to boredom. There is value to sitting with yourself and getting to have some thoughts. So I'm not telling you to listen to a book every fucking waking second of your life. I'm just saying that there are inane, boring things that we do that can help. And one last bit there, Ryan, like a myth that I had to dispel for myself is this anxious perfectionism around needing to understand and grasp everything out of something. The only time it's not the only time you can read it. You can listen to the whole fucking book, and if you like it, you go pick up the physical copy and then you read it. You can read an article twice. Like it actually takes the suspense and this like bizarre self-administered IQ test that comes with reading a book, where you seem to think you need to be fucking like, I can't miss anything or I'm an idiot. No, you should focus, but you don't need to make it unpleasant. Nobody's quizzing you. Your parents aren't, hovering over you.
Were you a yellow highlighter markup guy with physical books, and do you miss that?
I'm extremely disrespectful with books. I was a pen, like just pen, fucking scratches, thoughts on the edges.
Yeah, but don't you miss that? Like, to me, that's the essence of reading. The essence of reading is marking up the book and making a reminder for yourself that you never get back to. You'll never get back to it. But one day you'll pick that book up and you'll be like, those are my thoughts at that time.
Ryan, I miss it. That. I miss it desperately. And I'll add another wrench into this. My memory, I have a largely eidetic memory when it comes to text. So I'm not using the thing.
What does that mean? What does an eidetic memory mean?
It's the slightly more accurate terminology for when people talk about a photographic memory. Okay. Like I don't have a fully photographic memory, but I have enough text, like of retention when it comes to text that
Are you speed reading? Physical speed reading like Costin does?
I am extremely slow as a reader. That's part of the problem. So like I'm a very where my schooling, my great books background or whatever, I was reading these things and I was thinking through them and just so slowly, methodically sort of trying to like understand. And it means that I have retained things. Like I remember arguments from fucking Hegel or Wittgenstein that I haven't looked at for 15 fucking years, but it would take me so long to read a book.
But and most books, you remember it.
Most books are not worth that much attention. Dude, I'm telling you, there are books that you should read deeply and carefully, and they will change your life. And you should. And
there are some that you shouldn't.
There's some books that are not worth the paper they're fucking written on, and they sure as shit are not worth your time, and you shouldn't waste your time on them.
Couple of them in cyber too.
God forbid somebody gives you, Nicole Perlroth's book, and frankly, it will not be worth the adrenaline and anger that courses through your body as you see this shilling piece of garbage.
Stop. I got one more question, Constant. I'll get to you in a second. Maybe you're running out of time, but this book thing fascinates me because I'm in this space of like migrating to audiobooks and figuring out what am I going to miss? What's the trade-off? What's the experience going to be like? Juanito, last question for you. Do you find a difference between like the machine voices versus like a human reading it versus like the author themselves reading it? Is there a different experience and a different
There absolutely is a difference. That said, you brought up three things, right? You brought up machine voices, human readers, and then the author reading it.
right?
And I want to treat
and those are all three options you sometimes get.
I will treat all three separately. Let me start with backwards. With the author reading it, that is the one time I slow books down if it really matters. Like one of the greatest pleasures for me is listening to Anthony Bourdain's books, because he reads them. He reads Kitchen Confidential and Medium Raw on Audible. It's him. And like, it's a pleasure. I'll go back to like 1.5, 1.7 and listen to him in his voice.
What percentage of available books have the author reading it themselves? It's rare, right? It's like 5% maybe?
And frankly, if I'm saying it, if it's an author who's reading it, who like you like the author. If you don't care, like fuck it. Like just, go right back.
So that's the best experience.
Well, I think that's a pleasurable experience. I think that's different. And I don't think it's the best. Like some authors, you read it and you're like, bro, your accent is heavy. Like this is not appropriate, right? Like this isn't the best possible choice.
Get me the bot,
Yeah, which is why like Audible is so good in that most of the books, like they're being narrated by people who clearly are professional readers and they're good. And it's important if you want to speed up because they have common pronunciations. Right, they have the pauses and the tempo, and that is hitting the right thing, the right metric for when we talk about computer and like generated voices. The problem with computer generated voices is I think largely a matter of settings. If you use the right kind of tool, like the best reader app that I have found, which is not saying much, is something called Voice Dream Reader, and it comes with its own voices. The reason I like it is it highlights the text at the same time that it reads it, so it takes some of the pressure on me, off of me, and I can still kind of ingest some of these things and sort of see the text, which means I'll remember it. But what it made me realize is when you have the settings, the thing that's fucking with you is actually like the speed of the pauses. Like how much is it? 0.2? Whenever there's like a period at the end of a sentence, before the next sentence, is it normal for you to do 0.2 seconds or 0.3 seconds? Like it's things like that throw you off. So when you look, this is actually creating the most empathy I've ever genuinely had with like disabled folks. For me, it's it's an enhancement, and it's something that I'm grateful for, but it isn't a necessity. My eyes work. Right. I cannot believe how hard it must be for people who are blind to navigate the world of today, because our solutions fucking suck, and they're unevenly distributed. If you're using Edge has a really great native read aloud feature. Right click, read aloud, any website will work very well. Chrome does not have it. Safari does not have it for no fucking reason. Then you have websites
put AI.
There's AI. Websites that don't externalize it, like they make it harder to get accessibility text, et cetera, et cetera. But look, to the AI point, Ryan, there's 11 Labs is a company that specializes in AI voices. They have an app where you can take any PDF or text and you can have Burt Reynolds read it out to you. You can have Richard Feynman's voice while he's reading it to you. Yeah. It's not my go-to because, again, text highlighting, not quite there. And more importantly, it's not as easy to control the voices. Like clearly an AI is generating it. And when there are moments when like the volume just goes down for no fucking reason and then it comes back up for no fucking reason. Like it's just like, you're like, this is a cool experiment. And for certain books that have never been properly digitized, I'll take it. But also like, that's a neat thing that's like, it's within reach. So I hope that this is another thing that will become better.
Good. Last thing on books is, Costin, you're an actual speed reader. Is that something you learned? And is that something you continue to like invest in getting better at? And how do you describe it? Is it literally looking at a page, taking a photograph in your mind and retaining everything that you've seen? Is there like exercises I can do to be a better speed reader? Can you spend a minute on?
I mean, when I was younger, I was reading a lot of books, and somehow you get better, I guess, with patterns. So at some point, it's no longer reading by kind of predicting the ending of any phrase. So as you read the text, you kind of predict the next words, you predict the next phrase, which allows you to go like faster and faster through the pages. And probably just like Juan,
It's like Juanito boiling the frog by moving the speed.
I'm more of a visual learner myself, so for me it's been very difficult to switch to audiobooks. Unfortunately, it's difficult to travel. Like my best time to read books is when I travel, and when you travel, it's hard to travel with, I don't know, heavy books after 1 kilogram of books. Like nowadays,
you're traveling with too much other shit.
I travel with too much, like batteries, cables, chargers, adapters, 2 laptops.
It's why
external
I've never
hard drives.
There's amazing books like Gödel Escher Bach that I've always wanted to read that I will never read.
It's too heavy.
What is it? A New Science by Stephen Wolfram. Wolfram spent 10 years writing this
pages,
book.
Right.
It's this fucking big. It is massive. It's like physically.
True.
Sorry, Kosta. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
So it's like that. So because of this, and also because my eyesight has been getting worse and worse, I'm trying to switch to audiobooks, but I can't do the acceleration that Jax loves. So I try that. And also for me, it's quite difficult to listen to the book and do something else and do both well at the same time. So what happens is that when I listen to the book, I either concentrate on the book side of things or on something else. And then I realize that, let's say, if I watch a movie or driving somewhere, I lose a lot of the interesting insights from the book. So I find myself going back 1 chapter, 2 chapters, and re-listening to everything that the author was saying in there. But I think it's a matter of exercise, and it gets better in time. It's been getting better, so I've been
getting a little more used to it every time you do it, right?
Yeah, like do a bit of coding or writing Yara rules while listening to the books, or tagging infrastructure, pivoting, things like that.
That's the problem for me. I talked about multitasking with this, and to be fair, cognitively, it's not a good thing. It's not a helpful thing to do. My line is essentially, I avoid doing things that are of the same modality. So I don't do anything text-based. If I'm listening to like someone read something to me, I'm not trying to write, I'm not trying to text message, I'm not trying to read something else with my eyes. That is a splitting that is not helping anybody. Like you're just that is not good for you. But what I like doing is like playing Tetris while listening to an audiobook. I like playing Brotato while listening to an audiobook. I like, if you're drawing or whatever while listening to it, stuff like that.
Yeah,
walking
but you're
around.
a fidgeter though, right? Like you spend a lot of time fidgeting with stuff in your hand.
I've got my beads. I'm spinning my pens. Like, I've been carrying amber beads in my pocket for 30 years, right? Like but it also, it just works. Like, I think that's the part that works. You're walking through an airport, get on a plane, get on a flight for 3 hours, get off the flight, get out. That I can listen to an entire book in the time it takes me to get from one city to another.
And you felt like you read that book. That's the missing thing.
Yeah.
You get off the flight feeling like, oh, I've read that book. I got it.
Well, the big part of it is I do away with the myth that you need to do it all at once, that you need to grasp it all at once. If I listen to a book and I'm like, holy shit, that was an amazing book, I go and buy it physically, and then I go and like review it. And you also have an easier time skipping some things. Not every part of the book matters, but it's not like you're going to miss it, right?
All right, if we continue this podcast, people will not have time to go read these books. So let's close the show.
I've got other books to recommend.
They got to go read the books. We got to give them some time.
We're so close to 4 hours.
By the way, speaking of podcasts, one of the reasons I don't read as many books nowadays or listen is that I listen to podcasts.
We'll do another episode on your podcast recommendations.
We should.
Shout-outs. Costin, close the show with some shout-outs.
Shout-outs to several people. Like, first of all, to our good friend Akira, who has new challenges. Shout outs to him.
Hold on a
And
second.
thank
What's
you.
the context?
Yeah.
Well, who is Akira? What are the
Canada.
challenges?
We
Canada.
we saw Akira at Countermeasures. That's where I met him.
Saw Akira.
Right.
Correct. He's got a new job. I think he retired from his previous government service. He's at a new job now, and he was kind enough to give me a wonderful bag of coffee, which is sun roasted. So I was wondering, like, is it like really sun roasted? But apparently, it's like. They use the solar panels to produce electricity and electricity to roast the coffee.
Come on.
That's a
Come
stretch.
on. That
So-
doesn't
That's a
count.
stretch.
It is sun roasted. But it's an amazing
Sun
coffee.
roasting adjacent.
It's an amazing coffee for sure. So shout outs to Akira, who is always it's great to meet him, and to the other folks, of course, that we met in Canada. The reason I mentioned in Canada is that, like I said, there was a bit of snow during the New Year in the mountains near Dracula's castle, and it reminded me a bit of our
Trip to Ottawa.
epic journey to Ottawa, and your epic journey to Ottawa. Mine was shorter, yours was longer.
Yes, I landed in Montreal for the first snowstorm of the year, and the Canadians on the flights acted like they had never seen snow in their life. I was so aggravated. I don't even want to remember that. Some quick shout outs. Juanito, anything from your side?
Just well, a couple come to mind. I'm in the middle of sort of this moving process, and bro, I feel like I got sent to fat camp because there's stairs. Like everything hurts. My thighs hurt. My lower back hurts. I'm trying to do things, and I just stop to be like, like it just So it's been a lot of work, and I am nowhere near finished. But to some friends, particularly Lynn Saxon and Joel, Mary, Emily, Alex, all the folks that have come around to help me unpack, to help me set up the networking. For fuck's sake, the office is the only room that wasn't getting internet, so Lynn is fucking like splicing cables and doing all this shit yesterday just so that we could record the podcast today. So a huge shout out to my kind friends who've been amazing during this transition. And a surprise for me, I was at the ballet. I mentioned to you guys, I was at the ballet
Look at you,
like a
Mr.
few
Bushi
days
over
ago.
here.
Dude, I didn't realize. So I really nice seats. You're like right at the front because I wanted to hold myself to not falling asleep. Like classical music relaxes me, which is unusual.
What
so
did
I
you
Put
fall
on
say?
an
asleep.
audiobook.
Well, which
Yeah,
one
yeah,
did you
exactly.
say, by the way? What did
It
you
was
say?
the Nutcracker. It was the last production of the Nutcracker for the
Okay.
year.
Okay.
And I love Tchaikovsky. So I'm watching the ballet. Lovely, amazing production. We get to intermission. And like most people get up and leave, and this guy 2 seats next to me is like, "Are you Jags from the Three Buddy Problem?" And it was like, I'm way too high.
The
like
problem
this gotta
is
be,
at the
it was like,
ballet.
yeah, it was amazing. So like amazing guy. We were chatting about some of the old virus bulletin papers, talking about some of some ideas he had about ingesting putting certain types of metrics to cybersecurity. I think is actually quite fascinating. So, dude, the problem is expanding. It's everywhere. I did not expect that. It was like a bizarre moment of my different aspects of my life kind of converging in a way that I'm not used to.
Jeez.
But shout out to Mike, and thanks for listening.
We got to get you back out to a ghetto somewhere so we can kind of wash all this
My
stench of
street
bougism,
cred?
this
My
bougie.
street- My
Wash
street
this
cred.
bougie off for
I'm
you for a
sorry,
little bit.
Did you get the sense that I had
what is he doing at the
that I
ballet?
was roughing it up as a child? My hands are so smooth. Yeah.
Costin, I was at the ballet. It's a very, very specific flex, though. It's like,
Maybe.
do you go ballet?
You can go to the ballet. Every place has.
Oh my
Come on.
God.
I'm
Next
I'm
episode,
ashamed to
ballet
say yes. I'm ashamed to
recommendations.
say no. So I don't know. But
It's an interesting experience.
it was kind of mandatory during the communist times for all kids to go to the opera and ballet. So there's certain nice memories, but there's also some tough memories if you want, because kids, when you force kids to do something like learn French, in my case, you get like some kind of I don't know, glitch for your entire life, or when we are forced to learn Latin. But I do enjoy Bell. I enjoy Opera even more, to be honest.
Look at you.
But I don't have enough time. And you can call me, what do you say, bourgeois? Or you could call it like
Bougie,
the
you're
American.
just too bougie for me,
that's
man. You're too bougie
That's the
for me.
American version of bourgeois. No?
Yeah.
It's the American version pronunciation.
I want to give a shout out to all the folks who are posting their Spotify stats showing Three Body Problem at the top of their listener list. Shout out to all those guys listening to the show and actually into like all of Juanito rants and posting their experiences on LinkedIn with us. Shout out to all the listeners building fun stuff. Someone sent in a specific RSS feed they built just to be able to pull all the episodes and the transcript together into the same page. I'll post a link in the show description there. Anything else, guys, before we go?
Well,
We're at 2 hours,
like
59
everyone,
seconds. We got 12 seconds to 3 hours.
Look, like, just wanted to wish everyone a very good year, and I hope it was a peaceful, relaxing beginning of 2026. And let's see what kind of challenges and how many CISA advisories we're gonna get this year, how many Microsoft AI improvements of Windows. And I don't want to go into too many details, but I have a hunch that this will be an epic year.
Oh, yeah.
There, yeah, I asked him for predictions at the start of the show. He had none, and now he's ending the show with a big prediction.
Surprise us, motherfucker. We didn't know. Dude, yeah, absolutely. Hopefully good year for everybody. It's a slow ramp up right now. But for those of you that still have a little time before work kicks off again, highly recommend, I was forgetting, the deep learning AI course on Claude Code. It's like an hour, maybe an hour and 20 minutes. I watched it while having dinner. Like it's very easy. It is not the most updated, right? It was released in August, so you're still missing some of the new features, but it's a really good primer to just kind of get you started on like, what is this shit? And more importantly, some of the cooler features that I didn't know about, even though I've been using Claude Code for a while, like hooks and some of this other stuff. So if you're curious and you're just like, what is this? I have no idea what the fuck's going on. I think it's deeplearning.ai, the Claude Code course.
Great way to end it. Peace out, everyone. Catch you next week.
Bye-bye.
This episode of the Three Buddy Problem is brought to you by Material Security, the smarter way to protect Google Workspace. Your Gmail and Google Drive hold the keys to your company's data. Instead of juggling half-broken detections and manual triage, Material Security gives you one platform that automatically finds, investigates, and fixes account threats across email, files, and users. Material Security, protecting cloud and email assets from the inside out.